attitude is the opposite.
High fly ball, deep left field. Oh, 27 does it again.
Gone. Fernando Tatis Jr. with a 2-run shot has the Padres on the board.
Go. That's his 11th home run. Driven out to deep center field. Going back, Springer turning, looking, see ya. Oh, what a shot by Judge. The Yankees lead 1-0.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our newest episode of Free Baseball, number 25. It's a landmark. A day late because of some issues yesterday, but we're on today. Thank you for staying with us and watching us. Got a lot to talk about. Baseball's back after the All-Star break. Of course, we'll talk about how we did for our little miniature draft for the All-Star break. Spoiler alert, and it wasn't too great. But we got a lot to talk about. We'll kick it off, as always, with some hot weeks. This one close to my heart. Chicago Cubs, Nelson Velasquez. The past week, 9 plate appearances, hit .571. 667 on base with a 1857 slug. Pretty crazy. 5 runs, 3 dingers, 7 RBIs on the season. Hitting .243 with a .303 on base, 529 slug. Scored 13 times, 5 home runs on the season, 3 of them coming in that 1 week span. 13 RBI, 2 steals, and a 128 WRC plus. This was a guy that was pretty good. He was their Winter League MVP and their spring training MVP. So it's good to see him actually doing it on the big league stage. He's been kind of up and down. They've called him up and kind of sent him down once or twice, all over the place. But maybe this stretch will get him cemented with the big league team, with potentially a lot of trades coming in the next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking would open up some spots on him for the roster. Trade a couple of the bats. Maybe Ian Happ goes. Maybe Jason Hayward is paired with Contreras, or he's DFA'd. Probably not. Cubs are a little bit of a dumpster this season. Yeah. But yeah, 9 plate appearances and 3 home runs. That's pretty crazy. A home run in a third of your times to the plate is really good. He's a guy who's known for big power, but he also strikes out a lot. The most interesting thing was that he didn't strike out the whole week. So showing the power, not reaching on pitches. Yeah, pretty crazy. I would love to see him get a bigger shot in the lineup. He seems to have a lot of power potential, but he's also really young, so you never know. But definitely wanted to include him on here, as we talked about him when he first got called up and didn't have much to say, but now it seems like there's a little bit to say as he's sort of getting on the national radar. Maybe not national, but definitely getting on the Free Baseball podcast radar.
Course. Someone who has been on our radar has been Zach Gallen, ace for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Made just the 1 start last week, but went 7 innings pitched against the Washington Nationals. Gave up 2 hits, no earned, no walks, 7 strikeouts. Got 13 whiffs for a 29.9, almost a 30% CSW. Just crazy. He's so good when he's on. This season, 5-2 record, 100 2/3 innings pitched, the 3.31 ERA, almost a 1 flat whip, 1.02, and 23.5% K percent. Kind of had a down year in the last year or so, and just turned it back on this year. He's so good.
Yeah, I was surprised that we hadn't talked about him at all this year. Like I'm usually trying to mention guys in the hot weeks that we don't talk about a lot, sort of like an honorable mention sort of section about guys that were doing well across the last week. And I was pretty surprised that we literally have talked about Gallen. He's been in one rundown where he was one of like 8 guys to lead the league in wins in one of the months that we recapped. So it was pretty interesting to see him go off this week and sort of land on the top chart. So I threw him in here. He was really good. I'm pretty sure he had like 6 no-hit innings as well. So he was really doing well. I think the biggest thing for him is he needs to sort of choose one of his secondaries to become his primary secondary. I love that wording, primary secondary. But he he was a guy who had a lot of potential in the past. 2020 was a guy that I was sort of drafting everywhere in fantasy, and then he really took a step back last year, and I was out on him this year because he had some elbow troubles at the end of last year, but he sort of put those in the past, and he's been able to be pretty solid, not at the level that he was in 2020. So I'm hoping this is just the start of him reaching the next level.
Of course. So moving on, like always, we do the hot weeks. We'll cover players of the week. Normally they come out on Monday. We have to scramble to fit them in the rundown, but today didn't really need to do that. AL player of the week is Aaron Judge. It feels like inevitable that he's going to win MVP at this point. 23 plate appearances, hit 474, 565 on base, 12-11 OPS, wild, 6 runs, 4 dingers, slug, 12-11 slug. OPS wouldn't be that good. Slug, yeah, pretty good. 6 runs, 4 dingers, 11 RBIs. Got a steal in there. Love throwing that in there. Led all of the majors with 0.9 F4 on the season. Just crazy. 294 average, 376 on base, 650 slug, 80 runs, 37 home runs, 81 RBI, 9 steals, and a 183 WRC plus, chasing that 200 WRC plus. Yeah, I mean, I think you can just kind of pencil him in for AL MVP right now and then just hope someone knocks him off. But it doesn't seem likely at this point.
Come on, bro. You're forgetting about Shohei Ohtani.
Well, I don't know. Ohtani theoretically should win the MVP every single year. But, like, are people really going to vote for him if a Yankees player is doing good? I feel like that's like a national bias. It's like, well, Yankees player doing good.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he won it last year. We won't give it to Shohei.
Yeah, I mean, they better give it to Shohei. He's like clearly the best player in baseball, but Judge might be the best sole position player in baseball. He's been killing it. 37 home runs on the season already. That's really good for a full season, and we still got more than 2 months to go. So he's looking like he's going to like easily surpass 50, which we haven't seen since he last hit 50 in his rookie season. I'm pretty sure. No. Pete Alonso hit 50 in his rookie season. So yeah, that was the last time we saw 50 was in 2019. So maybe he can surpass 55. Haven't seen that since Giancarlo hit 59. And obviously we haven't seen 60 since Barry Bonds in 2001. So it's going to be a historic season for Judge no matter what, and he's been adding speed in there too. I think he's already surpassed his career high, or he's getting close. So yeah, he's been really incredible. He's gonna get paid a lot this offseason, bro.
Oh yeah. Comments over the All-Star break kind of alluding to the fact that it may not be the Yankees that's going to pay him all that money. So Yankees fans, maybe enjoy him, as Paul Dolan of the Cleveland Guardians would say. But yeah, I mean, he's just so good. Another guy, really good. Talk about all the time. NL Player of the Week, Paul Goldschmidt. Getting tired of mentioning this guy. 14 plate appearances, 462 average, 500 on base, 1385 slug, 4 runs, 4 dingers, 7 RBI in the last week on the season. Somehow right up there with Judge. He scored 68 times. 24 dingers, 77 RBIs, 5 steals, and a 192 WRC plus. And his traditional line is a 335 average, 417 on base, and a 619 slug. I mean, we mention him every single podcast, it seems like, just because he is that good. I mean, he's a different animal this year. He's always been good, but I mean, this year he feels like the runaway NL MVP too.
Yeah, we're gonna be covering breakout hitters from the first half, and Goldschmidt nearly qualified just from a statistical perspective because he's been that good this year that he's blown away any of his other seasons, which is crazy because he's like on a 34, 35. It's insane. The Cardinals are getting the most out of him, which is really dope to see. You were probably a big fan of Goldie before he hit St. Louis.
Unfortunately, yes, I was.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like a big personality guy, but he just like he plays every single day. He does sort of everything on the field. He doesn't have stupid mistakes and stuff like that, but he just impacts the ball so hard this year. He hasn't been hitting for power like Judge has, but the 4 home runs this past week, which came in like a span of 3 games, brought him up to 24, and that's very, very good. He will definitely get close to 35 or so, and he's leading Judge in WRC plus, which is, that's pretty impressive.
It's especially really impressive for a guy that Judge seems like he's just been on a completely different level this year. And it's like, well, Paul Goldschmidt statistically has been, better run producer at the plate. So moving on from these two guys, it seems like we mention all the time. We'll jump on some little tidbits over the last week, starting off with oh my God. The Red Sox were completely annihilated, dead, destroyed by the Blue Jays, lost 28-5. It's the most runs in Blue Jays history. Couple interesting facts from that game. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., he became the second Blue Jay ever with 6 hits in a game, joining Frank Catalanotto. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
And then they scored 40 runs in the series, which is a new franchise record. We were kind of talking about this as the game was going on. Like, would they break the MLB run record? They didn't quite, but good Lord. This was a pasting if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it was a complete massacre. It was like 25-3 in the 5th inning. It was really not looking good for the Red Sox. There were just so many terrible plays in there. I know they dropped like an infield pop-up. There was one of those fly balls to the outfield where the outfielder just doesn't see it and it lands like 30 feet behind him. And that turned into a inside the park grand slam for Raimel Tapia. Yeah, Lourdes really had a big game, but there was big games all over the place. I know Danny Jansen hit 2 home runs. I'm pretty sure the 28 runs are the most the Red Sox have ever given up in franchise history. So they murdered the Red Sox and they are still recovering. Rafael Devers hit the IL. So there's lots of things going bad for the Red Sox right now. And there is a very, very good possibility that they finish the season in last place in their division with the way the Orioles have been rising up the division and the way the Red Sox are falling behind right now. So either the Red Sox are going to sell. I just saw something that said JD Martinez could be on the move, or maybe they pick up some guys to improve their playoff chances, but it's really not looking good for them right now. They've been struggling big time.
Yeah, I also saw a report that said they weren't willing to move Bogaerts, even though he's an impending free agent, which the Red Sox are probably going to toe the line and be like, oh, well, we'll trade JD, but we'll hold on to Bogaerts. If you're going to sell, just sell. They're not good. I don't understand what really they have to prove. They're not good this year. I don't think they're better than the Orioles in the current state. Not at all. If you kind of watched Twitter while it was happening, you could see Jared Carrabis slowly descend into madness over the game too.
Yeah.
He's just going through it. And I'm pretty sure he'd probably represent every single Red Sox fan watching that series. Sidney Sweeney threw out the first pitch and everyone was like, oh yeah, Sox are never going to lose again. They got annihilated. And she tweeted after the game. She was like, man, I probably could have done better out there, which
should have kept her in the game.
Hard to argue. A couple other things over the last week. Daniel Vogelbach traded from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the Mets for Colin Holderman. Resident big boy Daniel Vogelbach, love that guy. He's got 2 more years of control. He's not a free agent until 2025. Big power guy, strikes out a ton. He's hitting 228 on the year, 338 on base, which is pretty solid, considering what he is. 430 slug, 12 dingers. 118 WRC plus. Is he really going to be a major piece for the Mets? Maybe. But they didn't really give up anything to get him, and he's still a guy with a lot of control. For a guy that can probably just club you, 25 home runs a year. I think this is a pretty solid move for the Mets.
Yeah, they have not been getting good production out of their DH spots. They've been trying to platoon Dom Smith and JD Davis. A point to Dom Smith's effectiveness this year, he was sent down to AAA at one point this season. So that sort of tells you all you need to know about how good he's been this year. And JD Davis has just been really underperforming his expected metrics and has not been able to get going at all. So Vogelbach should be a good addition to the team, able to platoon with JD Davis, and he's been really solid in Pittsburgh. He was sort of a quad A guy when he was coming up with the Mariners and sort of has moved around since then. But yeah, he's really solid. He's got really good plate discipline. He does sort of strike out, not a lot, not too bad. 24% isn't horrible. Like, I don't know, you've got guys like Patrick Wisdom striking out 35% of the time, Joey Gallo, guys like that. But he offsets that with a 14% walk rate, which is really, really good. So he does have pretty good plate discipline. He's pretty patient. And he, like you said, big beef boy. He can impact the ball when he hits it. So he should be able to be pretty solid for the Mets, especially with 2 more years of control. Holderman is pretty interesting. He was pretty effective in the major leagues, but he's been one of their top relief pitching prospects for a while. I don't think was on their top 30 list anywhere, but he's pretty solid. I'm not really sure what his pitch mix is. I don't have him pulled up now, but a 2.04 ERA and a 1.02 whip across the season with a near 27% strikeout rate. It's a pretty good return for the Pirates if they think they can turn him into somebody that's, you know, a shutdown reliever in the back of the bullpen. He can go multiple innings right now. So yeah, I mean, it seems like a fair trade-off either way. I don't think this is a huge move from either side, but it's cool to get the trade deadline started off with this trade, and hopefully it starts heating up over the next week or so.
Of course. I'll let you take the reins for this next one, since you got to talk about it on the other podcast you were on during the weekend.
Let's go.
You got to mention your boy. I'll let you take the reins.
Aaron Ashby signed a 5-year extension with the Brewers. He is also going to be mentioned later on in this podcast by me as well. It was a 5-year, $20.5 million deal. That's the guaranteed money, because he does have 28 and 29 club options that also include incentives, which could bring the deal up to an additional $25.5 million, which would be a total of $46 million over 7 years. Pretty interesting. He's a guy that has really good stuff. He throws hard from the left side. He's got a bunch of breaking pitches. He's really interesting. I will mention him later on, but I think he's like the next Shane McClanahan, maybe not at that level, but just the way that the stuff that he has, the deceptiveness that he throws with, and on a team that has really good pitching development, has developed a bunch of aces from sort of not super well-known prospects like Woodruff and Burns and Peralta, who were all like pretty solid prospects, but not something crazy. And they've all turned into aces. And I think Ashby is that next guy, and he's sort of in the vein of McClanahan in that he throws hard from the left side with 3+ secondary pitches.
Of course. Pains me saying that as a Brewers fan, or not as a Brewers fan, as the anti-Brewers fan. You know, they're probably my least favorite team in baseball, maybe right up there with St. Louis Cardinals. So, but Aaron Ashby, he's really, really good, and I do think he's going to be something special for the Brewers in the future. Moving on. David Ortiz was inducted into the Hall of Fame along with Gil Hodges, Jim Cott, Buck O'Neil, Tony Oliva, Minnie Minoso, and Bud Fowler. It's a cool weekend. Always love seeing the Hall of Fame inductions. We talked about that obviously on one of our first podcasts on Hall of Fame ballots and who all we thought would get in. So it's good to see those guys finally get into the Hall of Fame, especially for guys like Buck O'Neil. It was a really cool weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely a cool weekend for a lot of former black players, which is really cool to, you know, have more diversity in the Hall of Fame, especially Buck O'Neil. He's like, not only like he was like a really good baseball player, but he's just like one of the best personalities. If you've ever watched I'm forgetting what it's called. All those documentaries, baseball.
The Ken Burns.
Thank you.
Baseball documentaries.
Yeah, he's on there a lot, and his anecdotes and stories are just amazing. He's just like he's a historian in himself, just by like having experienced such great things. So I think it's really great to see him get in. I wish he had got in while he was still alive. Too bad. Minnie Minoso is also a really cool one. I think he should have been in a while ago. I'm pretty sure he was like the first Central American guy to make the major leagues, which is really cool. Was sort of a little bit after Larry Doby and Jackie Robinson. It was sort of bringing in the Latin American players into baseball, which was cool. And Bud Fowler is just a straight up Negro Leagues player, which is super dope to see them getting recognized even like 50+ years after they retired. So it's dope to see all these guys get in. Obviously, Big Papi, we knew he was the only one who wasn't brought in on the Veterans Committee. So all these other guys, Hodges and Cott and Oliva, were Veterans Committee guys. So it's cool to see these guys get in, and we were messaging each other about the next Hall of Fame ballot, which is looking very light.
Of course. We can talk about that a little bit too, if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's only one guy that's going to be able to make it.
If I can find the list, basically the only name that's on the list to worry about is Carlos Beltran, but there's names like John Lackey, Jared Weaver, Matt Cain, Andre Ethier's on there, like K-Rod. K-Rod's the closer who closed out our first podcast. He's on there. I think the only other person that might have a case at all is K-Rod. But the thing about K-Rod is, like, I don't even think he's comparable to Billy Wagner. I think he's more comparable to Joe Nathan, and Joe Nathan fell off the ballot in the first year. But yeah, there's a lot of names that honestly just are nothing special in my opinion. I know Matt Cain means a lot to you as a Giants fan, of course, but do you really think he's going to get? No. Jacoby Ellsbury was on there. I saw people genuinely on Twitter be like, "Oh yeah, Jacoby Ellsbury will get in the Hall of Fame." Hall of Fame of what? Like stealing money?
Hall of Fame of being injured for half of your career. He had a really good peak. He was like really exciting when he was peaking, but yeah, the injuries really took away from his career. Like you said, K-Rod's the only one who I think has a modicum of chance to get in after Beltran, whose controversy with the Astros sign stealing scandal is the only question mark surrounding his candidacy. I felt like he was like a clear Hall of Famer when he retired. And so it'll just be how the voters consider that whole scandal. But K-Rod's got the most saves in a single season, and I think he's like top 10 all time.
I think he's sixth saves all time.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking good. So that's the only thing that'll get him in there. But yeah, we'll definitely be able to go over this in more detail once the voting starts getting underway in the off season.
Yeah, the only other three names I missed were Houston Street, Mike Napoli, and Jason Worth. So take those as you will. But yeah, none of those guys are Hall of Famers outside like Beltran, in my opinion. But I don't think Beltran will get in first try. I think he'll probably get in like third time of asking, just as like a penalty of like he did stuff with the Astros. But like, not a whole lot else to say with that. One of the weaker ballots in the last few years. Moving on, we talked about Matt Cain. We can talk about his former rotation mate, Madison Bumgarner, aka the big crybaby man-child from North Carolina. He complained in the National Series about Victor Robles pimping a home run off of him, and it was a bomb too. He had a bomb off of Bumgarner, and they were down 7-1. So he called him a clown in the post-game press conference. So Victor Robles came out in the dugout the next day wearing a little honk clown nose, big red nose. So yeah, I'm sure Bumgarner loved that. I think Davey Martinez complained about Robles doing that. He's like, "Oh, I'll talk to him about it." Like, who cares? I mean, your team's not anywhere close to playoff contention. This is one of the only fun things your team's going to have. Yeah, it's one of the only fun things your team's going to have to talk about, especially if they trade Soto, like a lot of things are pointing to. Just shut up, Davey Martinez, and shut up, Madison Bumgarner. Nobody wants to hear you old fogies complain about like baseball being fun.
I want to hear Madison Bumgarner complain. I will always be a big fan. No. I love what he said. A few years ago. He's just like, you want to like let the kids play, let people show their personalities, then you got to let me be like an old angry fart because that's my personality. An old grumpy man. Yeah. I love that he like owned that. Like he knows that he's like a terrible like guy who just like gets angry at everything, but he's just like, yeah, that's my personality. If you want everybody else to embrace their personalities, I'm going to embrace mine. I'm going to get mad about little petty stuff like that. It was Robles' third home run of the season, so he probably felt pretty good when he hit it. But yeah, I mean, both of those guys are not having the best of seasons. Bumgarner's actually been pretty solid this season, but yeah, he can be a bit of a crybaby, but I love that he sort of embraces his terrible personality from time to time.
At least he owns up to it. I can respect that a little bit more.
Exactly.
I think the whole respect the kids playing or whatever came out after like Max Muncy kind of gave him the business. So yeah, he's known hater of home run pimp jobs. Madison Bumgarner. So moving on, that's all we got from the last week. We'll move on to the All-Star week and get that out of the way. Starting with first day, Juan Soto won the home run derby. We kind of drafted hitters beforehand. I don't want to talk about that part. So I don't want to talk about that part. A couple other notes to talk about. Albert Pujols made it to the second round after we all kind of clowned him because Kyle Schwarber put up probably the most pathetic first round in history from a number one seed in the home run derby. Just pitiful. Don't ever put him in a home run derby again because that's just embarrassing. Jake's pick, Julio Rodriguez, kind of stole the show, made the finals. Of course, had 32 home runs in the first round, and then he had 30 in the next, like 62 home runs through 2 rounds.
Yeah,
probably just ran out of gas a little bit against Soto. There's some controversy surrounding the home run counters. Of course, they kind of miscounted Schwarber's home run total, but he probably still would have lost to Pujols anyway because he just kind of completely faltered in the bonus round with his extra minute. He just stunk out loud. He did. I think he was one of the 2. He swung and missed during his round, it was him and Acuna. Him and
was the other one.
Yeah, him and Acuna both swung and missed during their rounds, which is honestly really funny because it's Kyle Schwarber. Out of the draft results, our fearless leader Devin Withers, he took Soto with the 5th pick. And he won. So shout out to Devin. He has bragging rights over us for the rest of time until the next All-Star game, I guess. At least.
Yeah.
So
it was a great show. I really enjoyed it. I love the Home Run Derby. One of my favorite baseball events for sure. I wish I had more people than my girlfriend who couldn't care less to watch it with. But it was a great time. I loved seeing Pujols did what he did. I mean, you didn't really know about the controversy at the time. It was sort of unbelievable to see him get that far. I loved when everybody sort of crowded around him, gave him a little extra break, and then how surprised he was and laughing and stuff about making it to the second round. It was really funny. I don't think he really expected that at all, and he was gassed, but he did his best. I thought the funniest part was that he would take a pitch and be like, no, keep throwing him. He would just watch a pitch come in and then swing on the next one. He needed some breaks. That was really fun. And Julio Rodriguez obviously was incredible. He really showed everybody that he's one of the next big stars in baseball. And I think that showed with me drafting him with my first pick in the draft. So yeah, it was really fun. Congrats to Devin. He really showed us up big time, not the biggest baseball guy. And he really showed us who's boss. And, that's why he's the owner of our website.
Yeah. So, my picks, by the way, who's your other pick, Jake? You had J-Rod.
It was Ronald.
Yeah. He went out in the first round, didn't he?
Yeah, but both of yours did.
Yeah, don't shut up, Jake. I had Kyle Schwarber. I took him with my first pick, and he completely blew it against Pujols. And then I took Corey Seeger, and Corey Seeger got the unfortunate draw of running.
He was good
into the buzzsaw that was Jared. He hit 24 home runs, and he lost. He hit I think it was the second or third most home runs in the entire first round, and he lost, which was crazy.
Yeah,
but yeah, we got beat up on in the draft. So on to the actual All-Star game. The American League, of course, defeated the National League. That's not the American League. There it is right there. American League has won 9 years in a row. I thought it was funny too because we talked about they had the home run swing off or whatever. If game was supposed to go into extra innings, it was just going to be a swing off, and the NL had by far and away the better hitters. I think it was Soto and I want to say it was Soto, Schwarber, and someone else.
Did they announce it beforehand?
Yeah, they did. I think it was Soto, Schwarber, and maybe Stanton, or not Stanton. He's on the AL. Someone else. It was another crazy home run hitter. It was Foolish Baseball tweeted, and it was so basically if the game goes to extra innings, you just declare the National League the winner. But of course they didn't win it again for the 9th year in a row. Giancarlo Stanton won MVP thanks to a colossal home run. A couple of other cool things to talk about from the game. Byron Buxton and Paul Goldschmidt both hit home runs. We talk about both of them on the podcast quite a bit. Flamethrowers from the NL and AL, Ryan Helsley of the St. Louis Cardinals and Emmanuel Clase of the Cleveland Guardians both came out there and just threw gas, just ran through the side, of course. And then cool little mic'd up moment with Alek Manoah. You want to talk about Alek Manoah?
That was my favorite part about the All-Star game. It was so sick. I think that's everybody's new favorite player. He was so sick. I already knew beforehand. I had him on my fantasy team last year, and I was a big fan of his. And he's just a really fun guy when he's not playing. So you could tell when he got up on the mound with that mic that he was going to have a good time. He just I said this on another podcast. He's just so confident with his personality and so confident with himself, as a person, as a player, that he just loves being himself. He's having a good time out there all the time. He doesn't let the big stage get the better of him. He just seems like such like a genuine, nice and fun and funny guy, while also being a dominant baseball player, which is so sick. Like, he seems like such a cool guy to hang out with, but also he was so funny on that podcast, calling the commentator sexy and that kind of stuff. Asking him who he should, what kind of pitches he should throw and things like that. 3 punchies, let's go. It was so sick. I loved all the mic'd up moments. Nestor Cortez and Jose Trevino also were really cool. But yeah, it was a pretty cool It was a pretty cool All-Star game. Excuse me. Sort of disappointing that the American League seems to just win this every single year. Not that I'm like rooting against any team, but I would have loved to see that home run derby, and the American League didn't let that happen because Class A was just insane with his 100 mile per hour cutters in the ninth, and Helsley threw the fastest pitch of the day. But yeah, you hit all the good points. It was a pretty good All-Star game. I wish it was more higher scoring, but I mean, they sort of made us look stupid with our All-Star game MVP draft, unfortunately.
Yeah, didn't do too well over the weekend. Did the Free Baseball Boys? So
no,
yeah, not ideal. I don't even think my 2 picks even did like anything at all.
Who were yours? We did 3 picks.
I don't even honestly remember.
I just listened to it last night. It was.
I'll try to pull it back up. But yeah,
it was pretty disappointing. If Devin was saying in the chat that if Isaiah had participated, since he's a big Yankees honk, he would have taken Giancarlo and he would have won and he would have looked really smart. But unfortunately, he bowed out of the draft and didn't get to go. Oh, you took Shohei with your first pick.
Yeah.
And you took a pitcher. You took David Bednar.
Yeah, of course. I had to take David Bednar. He was the GOAT. So I'm not going to not take David Bednar.
Yeah, and then you took Wilson Contreras. Okay, yeah. I have a good memory. Yeah, so Shohei got an at-bat, and he got a hit on the first pitch of the game, which was sick, and Wilson didn't do much, and Bednar threw a scoreless inning, I think. So pretty solid, not MVP worthy, and I'm pretty sure my guys were – yeah. I had Ty France and Jose Ramirez and Sandy Alcantara. Alcantara was definitely the best one. He didn't get to pitch more than 1 inning, unfortunately, but his 1 inning was really strong. I think he struck out a couple batters, and people were pretty impressed, but not impressed enough to get him that MVP award, especially because the National League freaking lost.
Of course. I think we both kind of stayed pretty National League heavy with me in the 2 picks. David Bednar, of course, was robbed. For the end of time, David Bednar was robbed of All-Star Game MVP. And so that's enough of our All-Star Game commiserating since we both lost to Devin and pretty much would have lost to Isaiah. So we'll move on to our weekly segment. We're doing the mini draft. Our last one, and we skipped last week for the most part. Did starting pitchers,
we did 2 last week.
Well, yeah, we did the 2. We did like the All-Star Game, but we're back to our regular weekly programming, player picks, weekly draft. We started with starting pitchers, of course, and we did the All-Star Game festivities ones. So we're going to go to first baseman this time. We got our 3 tiers of players this time with 3 picks. So, and we did the 2 picks for each tier last time. We'll do 3 this time.
No, I did something different because last time you sort of got locked into picks that like you didn't get to select. So it was sort of goofy that like, okay, like you make a pick and then I make 2 picks and then we're switching off basically just me making picks. So instead this time I put 3 names in each tier as to force each person to be allowed to have sort of a selection. So the first person will go, they'll pick a player, and then the second person gets to go twice, but you only get 1 person from each tier. So there are 3 names in each tier, but each person will only get 1 name from each tier. So it does give you the ability to actually choose somebody, and there will be 3 names left over that will not be part of the thing. But why don't we do a coin flip and read off the names?
All right.
Should I pull up the coin flip?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. Okay. Here we go. Google coin flip. All right. It's flipping, so I'm going to let it reflip again. All right. You want to call it?
Yeah, tails.
Okay, here we go. It is tails. All right. you get to go first, and let's read off those names before we get down to business.
So starting in our first tier of players, we have podcast favorite Paul Goldschmidt. We have Freddie Freeman, and we have Pete Alonso. In our tier 2, we have Christian Walker of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course, if you don't know him, Rhys Hoskins, of course, and Rowdy Tellez. And then our third tier, we have Eric Hosmer, Yuli Gurriel, and Jesus Aguilar.
All right, you're up first. It should be pretty interesting. We got some big all-stars in the first tier, some regulars, starters in the second tier, and the third tier is just some guys who have not been that great this year.
So I'm going to start with Paul Goldschmidt, and I think the reason behind Paul Goldschmidt is obvious for one reason and not so obvious for another for me. And obviously, he's just an insane baseball player. And two, he plays for the Cardinals, and if he blows it for me now, I just have reason to not like him more. So I'm going to go Paul Goldschmidt. If he sells me out, bro, you're dead to me. So Paulie G for my first pick. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid pick. Can't really go wrong with this first tier. So I'm choosing between Pete Alonso and Freddie Freeman. And I'm sort of going to go same boat as you. Choose a guy on the team that I completely despise who's really good. So if he does bad, I can just blame it on the Dodgers. I'm going Freddie Freeman. He's just been really hot the last couple of weeks. Pete Alonso's really good, but Freddie Freeman's just been really good in July, and I think he's going to finish it off strong. He's been showing some more power. I think he's got like 8 of his 14 home runs this month too. So I gotta bet on my boy Freddie. Let's hope he goes off for me. And then I get the first pick in the second tier, which rename those players: Christian Walker, Rhys Hoskins, and Rowdy Tellez. I am going to go Rhys Hoskins here. I think he is the best of the three, but the Phillies are without a couple of their best players, and Rowdy and Christian Walker are big power hitters. Rowdy's been turning it around after a couple of cold months, and Walker has been underperforming all year, but has over 20 home runs, which neither of these other guys can say. So I'm going Hoskins. I think he's going to have a hot week, but I mean, any of these guys can go off for a week, so you never really know who's going to happen. So I got Freddie and Rhys.
Okay, so Rowdy Tellez plays for the Milwaukee Brewers. And I don't know if I could do it to myself to have 2 divisional rival players for me. So I'm going to go with Christian Walker. He does have 22 home runs. There's a lot of rumors, reports going out that the Diamondbacks are probably going to look to trade him, which I think is the right move. He will be a really interesting player at the trade deadline too. So like there's a caveat of like, well, he might miss some time because he'll get traded. But, I'm going to go with Walker. I'm going to go with my gut. He was the first one I looked at, and I'm just like, we'll go with Christian Walker.
All right, so that leaves me with my final pick in tier 3, and I'll read off those names again: Eric Hosmer, Yuli Gurriel, and Jesus Aguilar. I don't think I can take those first 2 guys. I think I got to go with Jesus Aguilar. He really hasn't been too great this year, but I have a feeling that he's going to start turning around soon. He's big power guy. Obviously, he has a lot of fun on the field, but Yuli has really let age get the better of him this year, and Hosmer had a really hot start to the season, but just hits way too many ground balls for me to be comfortable with taking him. So my full team will be Freddie Freeman, Rhys Hoskins, and Jesus Aguilar.
Yeah, I saw the graph. It was like Hosmer has like the highest ground ball percent or whatever of like starting first baseman in the league or something. It's like 58%, and it like at the top of the graphic, it literally showed that he'd ground into like 1 double play and like another ground ball out or something like that. Regardless, I don't think I can take Yuli Gurriel. He's just been so bad this year. Hosmer, I mean, on Sunday he was okay. He went like 2 for 5. I think he had like a pair of RBI or something like that. He had 2 RBI. I think I'll go with Hosmer for my last pick. No Gurriel. I think I'm gonna ride it out with Hosmer.
All right, so that leaves you with Goldie, Christian Walker, and Eric Hosmer. We'll revisit this next week and see who wins. I won our first head-to-head matchup when we did starting pitchers, so we'll see who gets it this time. I'm hoping it's me, obviously. I want to be right, but I think this format will work a little better because it allows more choice in the matter, and we left off Pete Alonso, Tellez, and Gurriel, which is all right. Those guys will probably have their best. Should we compare how those 3 do?
We should include those like in the rundown. And if they all 3 outperform both of our picks, I think we should just call it a loss for both of us.
Yeah, we both get an L. Yeah, that's
we
fair.
should definitely.
All right. Okay, cool. So there's the second weekly mini draft so far in episode 25. So that'll be fun to keep track of during the week.
Yep. And on to our big crux of our show today. We've done our rundown, done our mini draft. Today we're going to talk about first half breakouts and then our second half predicted breakouts. So running over the first half breakouts, we're going to do like a bit of a buy or sell to start. And I think that'll be good. We'll talk about buy or sell some hitters, and then we'll do some pitchers. And I guess we'll start that out. Prefaced that the batters are going to be minimum 250 plate appearances. They had a 130 WRC plus or better in the first half. That also would have a 35% better WRC plus than their career average entering 2022, and it would also be 25% better than their career best prior to 2022, and that's based off of a minimum of 100 plate appearances. So I guess we'll kick it off with a guy we've talked about a lot. Ended up being the All-Star starter over Jose Ramirez, and that's Boston Red Sox third baseman Rafael Devers, who posted a 170 WRC plus in the first half. His career average 119 WRC plus, which is still solid, and his career best was in 2021 with a 134 WRC plus. Are you buying or selling Rafael Devers' breakout this year?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the clearest buy you'll see among the hitters. It's just it's sort of crazy to see him as a breakout candidate because he was so good last year and he was so good in 2019. You wouldn't expect him to sort of be able to jump that much higher than he was in the past, but that just tells you how good he's been this year. He's batting like 320. He's on pace for more than 30 home runs. He's just one of the best young hitters in baseball, even though he's been around for quite some time. He came up at like 21. So he seems to finally be reaching the full extent of his potential. Unfortunately, he just hit the IL, so he may not have as big of a second half, but maybe I'm not buying this level, but he's going to be one of the best hitters in baseball for the rest of the season, at least.
I'm right there with you. And it's so sustainable for him because he's been in the league for a long time. It feels like he's been around forever. He's not even 26 years old yet. And this is what he's posting. And I know he's not the best defender, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, his bat will play at any park, and especially at Fenway. He's just clubbing home runs, just getting a ton of hits. He was the AL hits leader at one point. We talked about that several times on the show. 22 dingers on the year. He's worth 4.5 WAR. Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, this is probably the clearest buy on the entire list for hitters. Definitely all in on Rafael Devers, and he's only on the 10-day. It's only on the 10-day deal. Like, I don't think he'll be out for long. I think he has a hamstring strain. But yeah, he'll be back soon, and he'll be back to punishing baseballs. So moving on, we'll stay in the AL East this time with Toronto Blue Jays catcher and first-time All-Star Alejandra Kirk posted a 149 WRC plus in the first half. His career average is 113 WRC plus, of course, and his career best is 106, which he posted in 2021. Are you in or out on Mr. Kirk?
I'm in. He's done exactly sort of what we expected him to do. He had a really crazy debut in 2020, but it was only 25 plate appearances. And then he was sort of the backup last year to Danny Jansen and Reese McGuire. So we didn't really get too many opportunities. So there were many people predicting a breakout for him this year with more opportunity behind the plate. And that's exactly what's happened. He's just so good in the plate discipline department, and he's a beef boy. A short one, but he's a beef boy. So that sort of makes you want to buy in even more. But yeah, 149 WRC plus from a primary catcher is really, really good. And he's walking 10.7% of the time and striking out only 9.1% of the time. So when you walk more than you strike out, that really shows how good of a hitter you are. And I've been really impressed by him this year. He's even shown the ability to hit the ball over the wall as well, while batting .319 right now, which I don't know exactly what it was in the first half, but still that's really impressive just to not strike out that much, still hit for power and make a lot of contact, especially from a guy with his frame who's also being behind the plate. So that's an easy buy for me as well.
Yeah, you said everything I needed to say, so I thought I'd preface this with his graduation TLDR on Fangraphs.com. And it just says, a bowling ball of a human who can really rake. Kirk still has plenty of questions to answer defensively, but the bat should play anywhere, and I think that sums him up perfectly. I'm in on Kirk. I think he's definitely the real deal offensively. Yeah, I mean, he walks more than he strikes out, hits for power, hits for average. I don't know what else you could want from him, especially from a starting catcher where like you don't typically get near that level of offense like from. Yeah, I'm in on Kirk. He's the real deal for sure. Seems like another name we talked about a lot. This is Los Angeles Angels outfielder Taylor Ward. He's posted a 149 WRC plus. Probably should have been an all-star. I think we both would have voted for him. I know I would have at least. Posted 149 WRC plus in the first half when his career average beforehand was 90. So that's 10 points below the league average, and his career best was a 111 WRC plus in 2021. Are you in or out on Taylor Ward?
This one's a little hard because he started off the season really well when he first came up. This is a guy who was coming up through the minors as a catcher, so it sort of took him a while to get off the position and lean into his abilities at the plate. He's a guy who's got really good plate discipline, not at the same level as Kirk, but he does walk over 12% of the time and doesn't strike out more than 25% of the time, which is a really good combination, Daniel Vogelbach-esque. But this is a guy batting in front of Trout and Ohtani, so it's like pitchers are going to attack him. But he did a really good job of taking a lot of pitches. When I wrote an article for Pitcher List last week, I had somebody comment and ask me if I think Taylor Ward is going to, continue what he's been doing in the second half. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on him, and it seemed as though he was not as patient as he was prior to, or he wasn't as patient, in the last month than he was in the first couple of months, where he was just letting the pitchers come to him, throw him good pitches, and he was only swinging at the pitches in the zone, not chasing at all. But it seems like he's pressing now and has sort of been chasing more pitches. He's striking out more, walking less. He's not hitting the ball as well because he's trying to hit balls that are out of the zone. So as long as he can get back to what he was doing in the first half of the season, which it's nice when you can see that there's a clear change that he can make, and it's something that he's done, and it's just take more pitches, don't be so aggressive, then it sort of gives you the confidence that he can get back to where he was. But I think just as a way of not buying all these guys, I'm going to sell it because I think with the way the Angels are going, they're not looking like they're going to make the playoffs. It's sort of hard to have the motivation to keep going in the second half to sort of change your approach at the plate. And I don't see Ward turning back on the Jets like he did in the first couple of months. So it's going to take a significant change for him to get back to where he was. And I just don't see that happening in the second half.
Yeah, just for the sake of being contrarian, I think I'm gonna buy on Taylor Ward. I think the concerns that you're mentioning are definitely there. You can look at his splits from like March and April. I mean, he tore the cover off the ball. He hit almost 400 in March and April, 314 in May, June 256, and then July 212. And then like you look at his strikeout numbers, and like he just chased a lot more in July, chased a lot more in June, didn't walk nearly as much, but I think those like issues are pretty easy to discover. Basically just needs to swing less. Just needs, like you said, pitchers to come to him a little bit more. And I think some shuffling around in the order could probably help him too, because he's hitting in front of Trout, which is definitely not going to help him. It'll help Trout, of course, but it's not going to help him as much. I think the issues are very clear to see, and they should be easy enough to change in theory. I don't necessarily think like, oh yeah, it's just cut and dry, just don't swing as much and he'll be fine. But I think it's not like he just had like a super hot flash in the pan month or two. Like you can see why he did. But like the tools are there. I think he could get back to that form. So I think I'm going to buy Taylor Ward this time. Staying in the AL this time, another corner outfielder. This is, I think he's Tampa Bay Rays corner outfielder, Harold Ramirez. Posted a 141 WRC plus when his career average was 91 previously, and his career best is in 2019 with a 92 WRC plus. Are you in or out on Harold Ramirez?
It's hard to be in on him right now because he just broke his thumb, and he's going to be out for like most of the rest of the season. So, I mean, that's an easy sell. But if I'm buying whether or not this is sustainable going into the future after this season, I think it is. I think the Rays know what they're doing with guys. He's sort of in the vein of Yandy Diaz in that he just hits the ball on the ground so much. So you thought, the Rays will be able to get him to increase his launch angle, put the ball in the air more, but he's actually posting the lowest launch angle of his career at 3.7 degrees, which is not great. But other than that, he impacts the ball really hard, and he's a good contact hitter. He's got pretty good plate discipline. He's striking out at the lowest rate of his career, 13.5%. So that's pretty impressive. He's obviously not going to bat 329 next year like he did this year, and a 141 WRC plus is really good. But I think he was an interesting player. He was always one of those guys that underperformed his expected metrics. I think over the last few years, actually, no, he didn't really underperform too badly over the last few years, but it was mostly just at the beginning of this season. Like, he's just got really impressive StatCast metrics where he hits the ball super hard at his max exit velocity, and he hits it hard consistently with his hard hit rate, which is always a good sign for a guy who's going to be a good hitter. And I think the Rays are going to put him in the best spots possible. He was sort of like a platoon guy at the beginning of the season, batting only versus lefties, and now he sort of started taking over an everyday role until he got injured, which is super unfortunate, especially because I had him in a deep league where a guy like that, who's just playing every day and being really solid, was really helping me out. So it was really too bad that he broke his thumb, but I'm hoping that he comes back strong next year. He's, like I said, just a guy with really good StatCast metrics that is finally doing what everyone expected him to do based off those stats and stuff. And the Rays are the team that can get the most out of him.
Yeah, you made the comparison with Yandy Diaz, and I think that fits him to a T. The Rays really know what they have, and basically every player that they do have. And Harold Ramirez is a guy that's literally bounced around. The Rays are his third team he's been on this year. He started the season in spring training with the Chicago Cubs, traded for, I think he was just traded for cash considerations to Cleveland. And then Cleveland sent him to the Rays for like nothing, which could end up being a big blow for Cleveland again. Now they lost Yandy Diaz for basically like Jake Bauers, who's nothing. So
True.
Yeah. Harold Ramirez, he's got really good underlying metrics, like you said, StatCast wise. He hits the ball hard. He doesn't strike out a ton. He makes contact in the zone. He just doesn't hit it hard. And they'll eventually just kind of figure that out, I think. He's had a good year, and I think he'll continue to be probably a pretty solid piece for them in the future. I like Harold Ramirez. Moving on. We talked about a former Cleveland Guardian. We'll talk about a current Cleveland Guardian. How about Andres Simenez, first-time All-Star, starting in place of Jose Altuve, posted a 137 WRC plus this season. His career average is just 86, but his career best was in 2020 with a 105 WRC plus. Are you in or out on Andres Simenez?
I don't know. This one's sort of hard because he did have a lot of prospect pedigree when he was coming up with the Mets, and he was part of the Francisco Lindor trade.
Yeah, he was part of the Lindor trade.
Yeah. Which was Carrasco part of that? Is that why I was getting confused?
Yeah, Carrasco was also part of that trade. It was like Carrasco, Rosario, Jimenez, and like something else for Lindor. Or Carrasco and Lindor. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been improving this year, which is a good sign. He's still only 23, which sort of gives you the confidence that he can keep this up. It just took him a while to get going. It's hard to be so good when you're so young in the majors. He's finally tapping into power, which he never showed off prior to this season, which is really cool. He's a left-handed hitter. He's like I said, still only 23. He just doesn't hit the ball super hard. Doesn't get a lot of barrels. He's outperforming his X stats by quite a bit. I think it's like 30 points in X WOBA versus WOBA. So I don't think he keeps up this level. I think he's more of like a slightly above average hitter because he gets a lot of his value from playing defense at second base. So I'm going to say sell on this one. I don't quite believe that he's like a well above average offensive guy who's just going to be a force at the plate all season. We've seen him falling off recently. I think maybe he's actually started to turn it around, but he started off really hot. I think he was batting 340 in the first month. He batted 326 in June. I guess actually I'm wrong. He's been really good in every single month now that I look at the stats on Fangraphs, but yeah, I'm not really buying that he's this good with the bat, but I still think he's going to be like a really solid above average hitter, just more slightly rather than well above.
I'm going to buy Andres Simenez. I was really high on him going into the All-Star break, and I said that he probably earned, like, for me, I voted for him over Altuve, just because he provides so much value defensively. And I know we're talking about offensive stats, but he provides a lot of value with his speed as well. He's a guy that just kind of puts the ball in play. He's got a high XBA, puts the ball in play, gets on base. He's fast. I like Andres Simenez. His batted ball metrics aren't super enticing, and I wish he would walk a little bit more. But I like Jimenez considering he's so young. I think he could just get better. I don't think he's going to be like a big super power hitter in the future, but I think he could probably be in like the high teens home runs kind of guy for his career. I like Jimenez. I really do. I would like to see the exit velocities go up. He's in like the 63rd percentile. But his XBA is really high. He's in the 84th percentile there. Puts the ball in play. I think a lot of his value would improve if he would just be a little bit more patient. I think his walk rate has kind of stayed pretty steady around like 5% or lower for his career. But I would, that's the only change I would really like to see him make. He's kind of dipped now. It's below 5% this year, but he's not striking out as much, only 21% of the time, which is more along the lines of league average. I like Jimenez. I think he's only going to get better from here. If not a ton, I think he will, like you say, he'll be like a marginal improver over the years. And by the time that the Guardians are eventually just going to ship him off somewhere for nothing, he'll be a pretty good, consistent hitter. Probably along the lines of like what Whit Merrifield was like at his peak, I think, is what I would classify the hitter that Jimenez should be in my mind. Moving on to staying in the state of Ohio this time, moving up to Cincinnati, down to Cincinnati, I think. Brandon Drury posted a 134 WRC plus in the first half. Career average is just 83, not very good, and his career best was in 2016, quite a while ago now, 102 WRC plus. Are you buying or selling Brandon Drury's breakout in the first half?
This is one that I think is really easy to sell, but I'm buying because I looked into him. I think it was a month ago or so. I was answering questions on the Pitcher List AMA on Reddit that they do every week. And somebody was asking if I believe that Brandon Drury's breakout was real. And so like I did with Taylor Ward, I dove deep on Brandon Drury, and he has some interesting changes to his profile, and most of it comes from him being more patient, which has really helped him improve all across the board. If you look just at his StatCast metrics, you'll see that he's outperforming everything, and that would sort of give you the belief like, oh shoot, like maybe I need to sell high if you're a fantasy manager, or lower your expectations if you're a fan of the Reds. But I think the changes that he made are going to stick throughout the season. He's walking at a career high rate, 7.3%, which has helped him post the lowest strikeout rate of his career in a full season since that 2016 season. So that's pretty impressive. It's led to the highest WRC plus of his career, which is really dope to see, especially after it seemed like his career was sort of over. I thought he would have like retired by now because he really wasn't latching on with any team. So I'm really glad that he didn't, because he's been really good. But yeah, it's all about him being more patient, which has allowed him to attack pitches that are better, that are going to result in better results, that are going to go further, go over the wall and stuff. It's resulted in a career high 11.6% barrel rate, which is like his previous high was 8.4. So it's a huge jump. He's hitting the ball hard consistently, 43%, also a career high. And that's just like really helped along the way. There's not too much to say other than that. Like he's hitting the ball in the air at a higher rate too. And then he also plays in a really hitter-friendly ballpark, probably the second most hitter-friendly in baseball behind Coors. So that sort of helps keep his baseline a little higher as well, even though he's on such a bad team, so he doesn't really get the run production stats. But being more patient has let him hit the ball harder and in the air more, which has let him break out. And I'm buying because that stadium is just going to keep him from regressing as hard as you would expect based on his StatCast metrics. But he could get traded at this deadline, which is something we'll cover shortly. And it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep it up if he does move.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind as what you just said. I'm out on Brandon Drury. I think the Reds always have a player like this every single year. Last year, if you remember, it was Tyler Naquin. They always have a guy that's like a random player that'll come out of nowhere that'll have like a really good season in like one of their first seasons in Great American. And if you look at Brandon Drury's like splits, he's been so much better at home than he has been away that's just kind of like an instant red flag for me. Because he plays in the NL Central, who's outside of like really the Brewers, like what real quality starting pitching does he face? Like, I mean, there's like Miles Mikolas and like maybe Marcus Stroman on a good day. There's not many good arms he's really going to face outside of like the Brewers rotation. And he's just been kind of killing it at Great American. And I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I thought Naquin was the real deal last year, and then he kind of fell back down to earth. And I think Drury will kind of do the same thing. I'm just not as high on Drury just because of that fact. I think a lot of his success, not completely boiled down to Great American, but I think it's definitely aiding in it. And I think if he gets traded, it'd be interesting to see how he put up numbers somewhere else. If he puts up numbers somewhere else, I'll eat my hat, whatever. But yeah, I'm out on Drury so far.
I'm holding you to that. You're gonna roast it in the oven,
maybe a different
400 degrees, some olive oil, some garlic.
Yeah, I'm out on Drury. I'm not buying bad Reds hitters being good out of nowhere again.
Fair. Fair.
I've been burned on Naquin. I'm not doing it again. So, moving on from Brandon Drury, we've got Chicago White Sox. Andrew Vaughn is posted a 133 WRC plus this year. Career average 94 WRC plus. When his career best is also a 94 WRC plus, which he posted last year in 2021. Are you buying or selling Andrew Vaughn?
I'm buying him. This is all prospect pedigree for me. He was a top 5 pick, maybe even top 3. He was the number 3 pick just a couple of years ago out of my very own UC Berkeley, which my mom and grandpa both work at. So big fan of UC Berkeley. It's dope to see a guy come out of there and make it big. He was just so good in college. Like, he was one of the best hitters in all of college baseball when he was playing. And so he just had tons of prospect pedigree when he was going through the minors, which he only had 1 year in the minor leagues. And obviously 2020, which was the weird shortened season, I think he would have made it to double A and probably triple A, but he's still only 24 this year. So it's sort of taken him a while to get going. His rookie year wasn't the best. 94 WRC plus isn't terrible, but he sort of wasn't getting the playing time because of Tony La Russa being stupid, and also just like being a young rookie, he has to make adjustments. And I think this year he's made all of those adjustments. He's swinging a lot more, which is, I think, totally fine. I'm pretty sure he's swinging a lot more. You would guess that by his lower walk rate. He's swinging 1% more. That's funny. I think he's just swinging out of the zone more, which has helped him reduce his strikeout rate and his walk rate. So he's being less patient. He's going after balls more often, and that has just let him go off. He's batting nearly 300. He's got double-digit home runs already after hitting only 15 last year. And I think this is just a guy with the prospect pedigree that I mentioned, that he is just finally reaching that, and he's just only going to continue getting better. I think he's just like a really professional hitter. You don't see a guy at first base who strikes out 16% of the time and hits for some power and hits with a high average. You just don't see that often. And I think this is somebody that it's going to become a household name over the next few years as he sort of grows into his own. And I think he's just one of the best hitters in baseball, and we just haven't even seen him reach his full potential yet, but he's just starting to break out this year.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on Vaughn. I initially was like, I don't really think so, but I mean, you can look at when he got drafted, 21-year-old rookie ball, like, just killed it. A ball, killed it. A plus, killed it. And then they had the COVID shortened season where he just didn't play. And then they just were like, all right, anyway, how about you join the big league club? And then he kind of struggled, but he still put up a 94 WRC plus, going from like really low level pitching. And it's like, okay, we'll throw you in the deep end. And then he put up barely less than like league average numbers. Like you said, I mean, he doesn't particularly walk as much as I would like to, but he doesn't strike out either. He's basically always putting the ball in play. And when he does, he typically hits it hard. I like Vaughn here. I mean, he's posting in career high exit velocities, which is weird to say because, of course, he's only got the 2 years. But if that just continues to climb, he's going to be a real problem hitter for the White Sox. It just depends on if Tony La Russa is going to consistently give him the playing time he deserves going forward. And if he can kind of stick in a position. I think he got drafted as like a first base prospect, but now he's kind of falling into the corner outfield, obviously because of Jose Abreu. But yeah, I like Vaughn. I think I'm buying Vaughn. Cool. So I think
we had mostly buys there. It seems like all these guys that are doing really well in the first half will probably do well in the second half. I think I sold on Taylor Ward, but you bought on him. We sort of had to sell on Harold Ramirez because he's going to be injured in the second half. Andres Simenez, I sold, but you sold on Brandon Drury, but I bought, and then we bought on Vaughn, Kirk, Devers, and yeah, that was it. Those were the guys that we agreed upon. So it'll be interesting to watch those guys in the second half. I will probably do that article again where I buy or sell the breakouts from the full season, which I did last year. That's going to be fun to look at. Probably do it in September when the season is coming to a close. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if these guys make that list.
Yeah, so we'll buy and sell some pitchers. I'll let you preface the pitchers this time.
Sure.
And then you can talk about our guy first.
Sure. So the qualifications for the pitchers making this list was that they had to throw a minimum of 70 innings pitched. Didn't want a bunch of relievers on here. It's sort of hard to grade a reliever based off of such a small sample size, just a first half and being a reliever. And they needed at least an 80 ERA minus or better in the first half. So this is sort of the opposite in WRC plus in that you want a lower number because ERA, you obviously want a lower number. So it's ERA minus rather than ERA plus, which would be above 100 would be better, but this is going to be below 100. It'll make more sense. And this is really the only statistic that you can use for this kind of stuff because it's the only one that's fixed by league average and that kind of stuff. Like you can look at a pitcher's strikeout rate, you can look at a pitcher's just basic ERA, but obviously like, I don't know, somebody in Coors is not going to it's going to have a better ERA minus than somebody with the same ERA pitching in Oakland because those ballparks are terrible. But ERA minus obviously doesn't encapsulate everything. It doesn't get the strikeouts. It doesn't get the walks, but there's not like one stat that you can look at that sort of encapsulates it like WRC plus does because WRC plus gets your triple slash as well as strikeouts or I think just walks, but yeah, ERA minus is the best we can do here. So it's going to be sort of the same stipulations. You need 35% better than the career average entering 2022 and 25% better than the player's career best prior to 2021. And that's going to be a minimum of 50 innings pitched for the career bests. And all these names are really big this season. I mean, to qualify for this list, it's basically just like the best pitchers in baseball so far.
Yeah. Starting off, it's basically the best pitcher in baseball for my money. Sandy Alcantara posted a 45 ERA minus. His career average is an 85 ERA minus, and his career best was last year with an 80. I already know what you're going to say. So I'm just going to say what I'm going to say too. I'm going to buy Sandy Alcantara. He's the best pitcher in baseball right now. I don't really think that there's only one other arm that really is contending with him right now. In all of baseball, in my opinion. I think this is the clearest buy from this list. For me, Sandy's the best, and I think he's going to win Cy Young.
Yeah, you're completely right. It's such an easy one. Clear buy. I think he's going to be able to keep this up in the second half, maybe not sub 2 ERA levels, but if he starts striking out more guys in the second half like he did last year, then he could take it to an even better level. I think he's going to be the clear NL Cy Young, and I'm going to look really smart for betting him as my preseason NL Cy Young Award winner. But yeah, besides that, Alcantara is really good. He's got amazing stuff. He's the best innings eater in baseball. I think he just snapped his streak of 13 straight 7 innings or more starts. I think he only went 6 innings in this last one. He was probably really upset with himself. So yeah, I love what Sandy's doing. He's an easy buy here.
Oh yeah. Moving on to the AL equivalent of Sandy Alcantara, which is very shocking because their numbers are so similar. And it's Tampa Bay Rays ace Shane McClanahan, 46 ERA minus, career average 84 ERA minus, of course, mirroring Sandy's 85. His career best, same thing, 85 ERA or 84 ERA minus from 2021. Shane McClanahan too, easy buy. He's a different animal, man. He's so good. He's the best left-handed starter in the league. He throws gas. He's just impossible to hit. I think he's still the AL strikeout leader, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think he got surpassed by the next guy.
The next guy, we'll talk about him too. Still, he's just a special pitcher. I think this is as easy a buy for me as there could be. He's got 147 strikeouts and 110 2/3 innings. He's got a sub 2 ERA. What more could you want from Shane McClanahan?
I guess 8 inning starts, complete games like Sandy. He doesn't quite do it like the GOAT does, but yeah, McClanahan is an easy buy as well for me. I loved him preseason. almost as much as I like Sandy. Obviously wasn't ranking him as high as Sandy because it took a couple changes for Shane to get here, and that was pulling back on his fastball a little and giving it a little more rise, which has helped it a lot. It was sort of in the same vein of Hunter Green, where it's like, oh, this guy throws really hard, except his fastball is really hittable, which is something that doesn't really compute with most people's brains. Like, how could a guy throw 100 miles per hour, which Shane doesn't quite do, but how can somebody throw so hard yet have such a hittable fastball? And it's mostly because of the shape of that fastball. So McClanahan has not only improved the shape, but also leaned more into his breaking pitches, where he's got above average changeup, slider, and curveball, which really helps him be super great. He's going to be great in the second half. The only question is whether or not the Rays limit his innings in the second half, because his career high was last season with 123. So it's going to be pretty hard for him to surpass that super far. I think maybe you can tack on 50 innings to that, and he gets around like 170 to 175, which might be the ceiling for him, but you never know. They do want him in the playoffs, so they don't want to push him too hard, especially with Baez going out with a elbow injury, and without Glass now, there's not really too much help in that rotation. So that's really the only concern with McClanahan, but I'm buying on the skills for sure.
Definitely. Another guy to join this triumvirate of young starting pitchers that have just been special this year, and that's Chicago White Sox Dylan Cease, probably the single biggest all-star snub. He's posted a 55 ERA minus. Career average is 100. And his career best is 91, which is last year. And he's current AL, like we said, Jake corrected me. He's the current AL strikeout leader. 157, I believe, is the right number. 154 and 110 and 2/3 innings pitched. Yeah. I'm going to buy Dylan Cease. I kind of was on the fence. The only issue I have with Cease is he just doesn't throw enough strikes consistently. When he's not throwing strikes, he's really hittable. And when he is throwing strikes, he is completely unhittable. So as long as he just continues to throw strikes, at least at a marginally increased rate, yeah, I'm all in on Cease. It's just a shame he's doing it in a White Sox jersey after the Cubs were so unfortunately robbed in the Jose Quintana trade.
For real. Yeah, I got Eloy too. But Dylan Cease is a pretty easy buy. I think I share the same reservations as you, as he just walks so many guys. I'm pretty sure he's got the highest walk percentage among qualified pitchers, 10.6%, but he's also got like one of the highest strikeout rates, which is even higher than last year. He's at 33 and nearly 0.5%. Excuse me. So he's really good. He's been leading into his slider a lot recently. I wrote about it on the weekly top performers, in that I think he's gone it was 6 straight starts or something with at least double-digit whiffs on his slider, which is crazy. Like, double-digit whiffs is like, oh man, that pitch is really working today. And so he's just been leaning into that really heavily recently. But yeah, he sort of makes up with those walks by striking out a bunch of guys. So he's really can really take off even further, which is sort of mind-blowing if he is able to limit the walks. But I'm pretty sure walks are really sticky from season to season, and that's why he hasn't been able to shake that at all. Like, he really struggled in 2020 with a 13% walk rate, and now he's still at 10%, like I said, which is really not good. But those are the only reservations you can have for a guy that's been so good this season. He strikes out a lot of batters. He can go pretty deep into his starts. But yeah, if he really doesn't get the walks under control, you could definitely see him start coming back towards that career average of 100 ERA minus. So I think it's a buy here, but like I said multiple times, gotta watch out for the free passes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you mentioned his slider. He's actually got a higher usage percent on his slider than he does his fastball, which you don't see very often from a lot of big league starters. But it makes a lot of sense because he's got 88 strikeouts on it. He's only what do you think opponents are hitting against his slider, Jake?
I don't want to go too crazy. I'm going to say 85.
They're hitting 125, but they're only slugging
I went too crazy.
.172. And he's also almost rocking a 50% whiff percentage just on his slider. It's 47.5%.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it has 31.4% put away percent. So it's completely insane. Incredible slider that Dylan Cease has. And as long as he throws strikes, he'll be fine. Moving on to Atlanta Braves starter. Kyle Wright, our rundown says that he has a 70 WRC plus, which would be really good considering he's a hitter.
Oh,
But he's got a So Kyle Wright, he's got a 70 ERA minus. His career average is a 147 ERA minus, which is not great. His career best was a 114 ERA minus, and it seems like he's finally putting it together a little bit more this year. So are you buying or selling on Kyle Wright?
I don't want to be at risk of buying all of these guys because I really want to. They've all been so good, but I'm going to anyway. I got to buy in on Kyle Wright. He just had such a high prospect pedigree when he was coming up. I think he was drafted very high. He was the 5th overall pick in 2017, but it took him a while to reach that potential. And I think this year he's finally doing that. And it's sort of not in the same vein as Cease, but something that we could see Cease doing. And that's just not walking anybody. He was like really struggling with the walks in previous years. He was like always over 14%. I think across his first few seasons, he was averaging a 14.8% walk rate. And that would be like really amazing if you were a hitter, but it's absolutely horrible if you're a pitcher. He's cut that in half to 7.2%, which is really incredible. Just he's throwing the ball in the zone more. It's working out for him. Not only is he striking out more batters, but he's limiting the base runners. He's limiting runs, and it's really turned into a breakout season for him. Just in almost every department, he goes deep into games. He doesn't strike out a ton of batters like the last 3 guys we talked about. Or, I mean, I guess he's sort of in that same boat as Sandy, striking out 24% of batters, but he induces a lot of ground balls. His primary pitch, his curveball, has really taken off this year. He throws it mid 80s and he gets nearly a 40% CSW on the pitch. So that's really good to have that as your average for the whole season. 40% is absolutely top tier. So he's one of the best pitchers in baseball in the first half because he's been able to throw pitches for strikes and lean on his best pitch.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, interesting enough with Dylan Cease, I mean, the usage percent on his slider outpaced his fastball. Kyle Wright was like, all right, that's cool. Watch me throw this curveball about like 12% more than I throw, about 12% more than I throw like my my fastball or whatever. I think it's like 9 or 10%, and that he almost throws his curveball more than his fastball, and he's getting results. I do agree with you on his prospect pedigree kind of carrying him, and he's been so kind of middling to average to bad in his previous seasons, and he's 26 now. He's found something that's working, and I can envision it working in the future. So I think I'm going to buy Kyle Wright, to also being at risk of buying every single pitcher on this list. But yeah, I think I'm in on Kyle Wright. Prospect pedigree is finally shining through, even when he is 26 now. Kind of, getting one of his last final goes at it before it's kind of deemed like, oh, well, this guy isn't much of anything. Yeah, I like Kyle Wright here. I think he's finally found something that is working for him. Almost got a 30% put away percent on his on that curveball, and it's just hard for hitters to really hit him when he's throwing it. So yeah, I think I'm also going to buy Kyle Wright. And we've got one more name here to talk about, and that's going to be Seattle Mariners ace Logan Gilbert, posting a 74 ERA minus when his career average and career best both sit at 113. His career best coming in 2021, which is his cup of coffee last year. What are you feeling on Logan Gilbert? I think we've both kind of had differing opinions of him on the podcast to start the year. How are you feeling on Logan Gilbert now?
I was buying into Gilbert big time entering this season because he did such a good job of adjusting to the adjustments that the hitters made against him in his rookie year. And we talked about it extensively about how roller coastery his months were last season, but he sort of came out on top, finishing the season strong. And I felt that he was going to do that going into this season, especially after working out with Jacob deGrom in the offseason, which is probably the best pitcher you can work out with for sure. And I have him in a lot of my leagues. I have him in my home league, and he's been really good. And he's been, one of the best pitchers on my team. And I love being smart to get him as a breakout pick. But the only problem is that the process has not been what you want to see with him. He relies so heavily on his fastball to be really good, which it is really good. And he uses it more than 50% of the time, but he's not leaning on his breaking pitches at all. They haven't been good this season for the whole season, which has sort of led to skepticism throughout the year that when is he going to blow up? When is this going to start going south? And it just hasn't. He's just been able to ride that fastball all season long, even though it's not like crazy or anything. It just, I don't know. It gets a lot of whiffs when he does throw it at the top of the zone, but it's been really disappointing to see him not lean on that slider to great effects, and same with the curveball. So I'm going to have to sell, even though this is a guy I'm going to keep on my fantasy team for the rest of the year and that I hope is able to turn it around. It's just going to take a change. He's going to need to get the feel for those secondaries if he wants to keep this going or take off even further in the second half. It's not only limited his strikeout potential. He's striking out only 23% of batters, but it's also limited his ability to, have the confidence to not have to rely on the fastball every day. So it's basically just like when he goes out there, if the fastball is not feeling it, he's not going to do great. He's been able to work around that so far, especially, getting 10 wins. He's been really good in that department, and he's able to work deep into games, but he is a big fly ball pitcher. He's, like I said, not using his off-speed pitches enough and to the best effect. So I'm going to have to sell unless he makes a change, because I think it's going to start biting him in the butt in the second half.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think I'm going to sell just because he hasn't really found one, like an off-speed pitch that he is comfortable enough to rely on. And fly balls might work when you're playing in Seattle, where it's always a little bit colder, rainier, your outfield's a little bit bigger. The walls are a little bit further out. I think it's a little bit easier for you to rely on that. His xERA is in the 4s. And his StatCast metrics just don't look very enticing outside of like, he doesn't walk a lot of guys. He doesn't give up a ton of barrels, but it's not like, it's kind of around the average mark. He doesn't get a lot of guys to chase. He just doesn't, it's like you said, it's limiting his strikeout potential because he just doesn't have a put away pitch that he can rely on consistently. That's not his big fastball. And everyone kind of knows he's got the big fastball. Mm-hmm. When he's not able to rely on like that slider, that curveball, that changeup, anything, because they're all kind of sitting right around the same put away percentage. I think they're all within like 2-3 points of each other. He's really kind of going to struggle at some point. If you're going to take him away and you're going to put him in an offensive environment in Houston, where he's probably going to get roughed up a little bit, in Anaheim, or not Anaheim, in Los Angeles, where they're going to play like the Angels, it's going to be a little bit tougher for him. Seattle can kind of mitigate some of those mistakes with their ballpark, with their cold air. Like, I know they play in a dome, but they don't have it open all the time, but it's just always a little bit colder in Seattle. I'm not as high on Logan Gilbert as I was to start the year. But yeah, I sure would like to be, because I think he can be the real deal. He just needs to figure out something that works. If it comes down to him being a 3-pitch pitcher and scrapping changeup, scrapping curveball, whatever, just get one of them to work. It works for DeGrom, and I know he's not. It's tough to be like, just be like DeGrom. It's like, just find something that works for you and use it until they figure out how to hit it, and then either make it better or rely on something else. And right now, the fastball's getting him through it, but I don't know for how much longer.
Yeah, totally agree. So to recap the breakout pitchers from the first half, we were buying Sandy, we're buying Shane McClanahan, we are buying Dylan Cease with the caveat that he needs to get the walks under control. We're buying Kyle Wright, and we're both selling Logan Gilbert unless he makes some changes to his repertoire's effectiveness. So now, we go from those first half breakouts, and now we're going to try to predict who's going to do that in the second half.
Of course. So Jake's already got his laid out. I think I'm going to let him start, but we're going to run down our three candidates for second half breakouts that we think will take over the rest of the season, and then a couple honorable mentions. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you, Jake, and you can run down your three first.
Sure. I think we should switch off. I think that would be better than just going 3 and 3.
That's fine.
So, I have 2 in 2 of my slots, which is classic. It's a classic example of me just not being able to decide, and also just
classic
wanting
Jake.
to talk about every single baseball player. Yeah. But I got 2 shortstops. I got Willie Adamus and Corey Seeger. I think they're both in the same vein in that they're going to break out in the second half, but also that they have been really good this season, but are going to reach a even higher level in the second half. Both of them have more than 20 home runs, but both of them have been underperforming so greatly in their expected metrics and mostly in the average department, where Willie Adamus has a 234 BABIP. Do you want to guess what his BABIP was prior to this season?
I have no clue. I bet it was like 360.
342. It's a little high, but 342 is still high in itself. And the fact that he's more than 100 points below that sort of tells you that he's going to start having those hits land. It's going to start going his way. And I think with the power that he's shown since leaving Tampa Bay, he's going to maintain that while also having the luck swing the other way. So I really think he's going to break out in the second half. And then it's sort of the same with Seeger. He's got a 238 BABIP. What do you think his BABIP was prior to this season?
Let's get. I bet it was also probably in the 100 points lower range. So I think we'll go with 350.
336, just barely. I think it was more. There was more of a discrepancy when I was first researching this a couple days ago. But that's still insane for a guy that hits the ball so hard and it is just moved to a new stadium that is sort of just as bad as Dodger Stadium, especially for lefties. He's got to turn it around. Like, he's been hitting the home runs a lot recently, but that average, which is sitting at 248, is going to turn around. I think his expected metrics are some of the best in the league, and he's underperforming those so greatly. He's got a 248 average. That comes with a 289 X batting average, and he's slugging 475 about, and he's got an about 540 X slug, and that means he's underperforming his expected WOBA by more than 40 points, which is pretty incredible. Adamus is not in that same territory of underperforming his metrics. I think it's a little bit more deserved, but that BABIP is going to turn around, especially for Seeger as well. And I think both of those guys are going to turn it on in the second half, even though, like I said, they've already been really good. They both have more than 20 home runs. They're just like really underperforming in that average department. And I think that's going to, like, they're going to be the best shortstops in baseball in the second half, and people are going to be like, wow, like, these guys are really something else. They're going to like combine for 40 home runs in the second half for sure. How do you feel about those guys?
I don't like buying Willie Adamus. He plays for the Brewers. I've always been really high on Corey Seeger. I think Corey Seeger's an excellent hitter. And I would bank on both of them really, really turning it on. Like you said, I mean, Willie Adams has just been getting unlucky. Corey Seeger has been getting unlucky, but also is stuck trying to adapt to a completely new stadium and a new environment and live up to a massive contract. And you could see it, you could see the early signs. We mentioned him on a couple podcasts right before the All-Star break where he was just tearing the cover off the ball. I like Corey Seager. He was never going to be this down for long. Willie Adamus, I hope not, but yeah, I could see Willie Adamus being right there too. He was a different animal last year after he got out of Tropicana, and he's got top prospect pedigree as well. Yeah, I could see both of those guys really being big in the second half. My pick for my first breakout is an interesting one, I think, just because he had a high pedigree as well, and it's former Baltimore, one of their top prospects. It's Ryan Mountcastle. I'm gonna go with Ryan Mountcastle for my first pick, just because he had a solid first half. I think he posted like a 763 OPS. He's had a weird season too. He's been more aggressive in the zone. He's walking less, but he's striking out less as well. His BABIP's climbing, his average is climbing, on base is staying right around the same, which makes sense. Posted a 111 WRC plus, but that's kind of off the back of him having a pretty miserable start to the season, and that's based on the fact that he's been struggling a little bit against like off speed, and he's made adjustments from the previous season. Kind of started out 247 average for the month, 275, 297, and then in July kind of fell back to earth a little bit. But Ryan Mountcastle, I think he has all the physical tools to be one of the best hitters in baseball. He really just pounds the ball when he hits it. He's posted a career high in exit velocity, in average exit velocity this year, excuse me. He's got the highest XBA of his career, highest X slug, and the highest hard hit percent. And he's doing it off of the back of him slugging. So he's last year against off speed really killed him. He's always been a good fastball hitter, but last year he slugged 240 against off speed in 2021, which is very, very bad. This year he's slugging 667. So he's made the necessary changes like he said he was going to, because he acknowledged it was an issue in the off season. And this year, like I said, he's striking out less because he's getting fooled by less off speed. So from the 2021 to 2022 changes year over year, Last year, he chased changeup in 2021 to 2020. From 2021 to 2022, he chased changeups 48% of the time. That's down to 37%. Curveballs 46% of the time, down to 41%. And then sinkers, cutters, stuff like that, gone from 37. Marginal change this time, 35%. He's got top prospect pedigree. He hits the ball hard. His big issue was just couldn't hit the breaking ball. He's like what was the guy from Major League, could only hit the fastball, that needed Jobu. He found Jobu.
Pedro Serrano.
Yeah, Pedro Serrano. He found Jobu. He's hitting off speed now. I'm gonna go with Ryan Mountcastle. I think he's got all the tools. The Orioles are surging. He's got some lineup protection now with Adley Rutschman. And guys that will be coming up to try to help out that lineup that's still not very good. I really like Mountcastle as a big guy in the second half.
Yeah, that's a good call. He's really improved across the board. It's the only thing that's holding him back is that left field wall in Baltimore. Yeah. I think that's why he's underperforming all of his metrics. Yeah, because they haven't updated the expected metrics for Baltimore. So he's I don't think it works like that, but his WRC plus would be a lot higher than 111 if that was sort of fixed for the new stadium, because that wall is just a killer for right-handed hitters. He hits the ball so hard, and he's probably gotten so many home runs taken away. Probably not as many as Trey Mancini, but maybe if he plays a few more away games in the second half, he will be able to capitalize on those better batted ball metrics that he's been posting and all those great stats, great, wonderful stats that you read off. But I've also got a guy who plays a little bit of first base who I think is going to break out in the second half. This guy's a rookie though. It's Vinny Pasquantino, the Italian nightmare, Italian breakfast. He's got all the nicknames. I think he prefers nightmare. So we'll stick with that one. But yeah, Vinny P, he's going to go off in the second half. And there's a lot of things that are going his way. He's obviously also in a terrible lineup in a terrible hitter's park, but I think he's going to make up for that with just how great of a hitter he is. I was sorting by the difference between WOBA and ex-WOBA to get the last final notable exemptions in there, or honorable mentions, so that we wouldn't miss anybody. And when I lowered the threshold to my girlfriend just asked me if I wanted Jamba Juice. Gotta say yes. But when I lowered the thresholds to, when I lowered no free ads,
no free
clout. When I lowered the threshold to 50 batted ball events, which is very low, he was the top underperformer in ex-WOBA, and it was just by such a wide margin. It's 90 points, which is crazy. So he's been really unlucky this year. He hits the ball really hard. 14% barrel rate is very, very good. 57% hard hit rate is amazing. He's underperforming in just so many different categories. A 94 mile per hour average exit velocity is just top notch. Just the StatCast metrics show everything that you need to know. But then on top of that, he's got amazing plate discipline. He walks 11% of the time, which is very solid, but then he only strikes out 16% of the time. This is with a guy, like I just said, impacts the ball super hard. So he's also able to make contact. I think he's going to finish the season batting like 260, 275 at least. He's at 218 right now. And I think he's going to mash like at least 10 homers in the second half, probably more, maybe closer to 15. It's going to take him just continuing to do what he's been doing, which is really great. What he's been doing so far. Do you buy into the Italian nightmare as much as I do?
Of course I do. We've talked about him several times on this podcast. Bro, I love Vinny Pasquantino. Nick Prado, super Italian Stallions for the Kansas City Royals. Of course I'm buying on Vinny. He's going to hit 1 million home runs in the second half. He's the GOAT. So I stayed in the AL Central with my second pick, and it's a guy, if you could judge by my hat, who may be near and dear to my Chicago Cubs loving heart, and that would be Javier Baez, who, of course, had a completely miserable first half. But here comes the caveat. So dating back to June 15th, he had a 47 WRC plus. He had a season average that was 188, and he was rated as the actual worst offensive player in all of baseball. Apparently he had a meeting with AJ Hinch that day, his agent. They talked about some things. 9-game hitting streak, 4 dingers, 7 runs, 9 RBI, stole 2 bases. He still plays defense. He's a guy that is never going to be a high average hitter. Everyone is aware of that. He's never going to be a high average guy. He is never going to be a guy that walks a lot, but he is a guy that will hit for power, and he is a guy that will make things happen for you. You can look at his stats based on month-to-month basis. He really struggled in May specifically. He had a 20 WRC plus in May, and that's just miserable. 25% strikeout percentage, walked about 3% of the time, at 195 WOBA. But then he goes to June, like I said, June 15th, awful. After June 15th, posted a 123 WRC plus for the month. Walk percentage goes up, K percentage goes down. WOBA 342. July, still not great, had an 80 WRC plus, but 280 WOBA, not great, but the signs are there. He's brought his average up substantially, and he's brought his WRC plus up from 44 to 77. He's hitting 218, so he's up 20 points, 20 points from June 15th. So in about a month and a week or so, a month and 2 weeks, month and 10 days example. I think he's a guy that you could bet on potentially being right there. Maybe not necessarily back to when he came in like third for the MVP race, but you could expect him to be hitting for more power. You could expect him to be hitting for a little bit higher average. He's not a 218 hitter. He's probably right around like a 240 to 260 guy, because that's what he's been for basically his whole career. He plays Gold Glove defense. This of course is a hitting thing, but he plays Gold Glove defense, of course, at shortstop. It's hard. He's got the pedigree, and he's got the proven results in the past that this isn't what Javi Baez is going to be for a whole year. So I'm going to bet big on Javi Baez that he'll have a good second half. Hopefully the Tigers will not do well. Maybe it would be good for Javi if they did trade everybody off like they were going to, and trade him to a real team where he might have a chance to have some lineup protection where they won't just not pitch anything to him, because he will swing at it. If you throw something at his eyeballs, you throw something at his ankles, he'll swing at it regardless. Mm-hmm. But give him a little bit of lineup protection, and we'll maybe see what he does.
It's been a really terrible season for him so far this year. Yeah. It's you sort of got to expect him to at least get close to what he's done in the past, but I don't know. It's sort of hard being in such a terrible ballpark and such a terrible lineup. You don't really have too much motivation to play so hard when your team absolutely sucks. But the only thing that gives me any reason to buy into him being better in the second half is, like you said, the previous pedigree that he's shown, the previous results that he's shown in the past, and also the fact that he's sporting the lowest strikeout rate of his career since 2016 in a full season. So, I mean, that's a good sign for a guy that just has negative plate discipline. Like he literally, like you were saying, he'll chase anything. He's not going to walk.
He's like
going
to
hit. He'd rather hit.
He's like Vlad.
Vlad Senior.
If you throw him, Vlad Senior. If you throw him anything, he'll swing at it. Him potentially being around Miguel Cabrera for so long now could help him. I mean, he could grow as a hitter. Miggy's obviously one of the best hitters that's ever lived. So when you have that presence near you to talk to and try to seek advice from, it's gotta count for something. I'm counting on Javi to not be, he's not the worst hitter in baseball, no matter what anyone says. He's not the worst hitter in baseball, and he's not going to be that over a full season.
Yeah. I hope for your sake and all of Cubs / Tiger / Baez fans that he has a lot more to root for in the second half. We'll see. The Tigers are not going to be competitive, but for a couple teams that do hope to be competitive, I chose 2 more players for my third selection, basically my 4th and 5th selection. I can't help myself. And these are 2 guys that are both on my home league fantasy team. So, I'm only choosing these because I want them to be good in the second half for my own sake. But, I wouldn't just choose guys without the statistical, the stats to back it up. And Aaron Ashby is one of those guys. He may not break out fully until next season, sort of like McClanahan did, where it's like he has such great stuff, but it may just take like another off season working with the major league club to fully get there. But I think Ashby breaks out big time in the second half. I mentioned him earlier in the podcast, but it sort of just does the same stuff that McClanahan does. Lefties don't really throw harder than around 96 miles per hour as starters. And that's what Ashby averages on his sinker. He also has a plus slider, changeup, and curveball, which you don't really see too much. 37% CSW on the slider. The changeup is 32%, which is very good. And the curveball is also incredible. It's got a 45% CSW. That's really incredible. Not only is he getting called strikes, but he's also getting whiffs on it. And he also gets like the second most ground balls fifth most ground balls, according to Pitcher List. So that sort of has some playing time stipulations there, but that's really good. He throws the ball really hard, like I said, and he's got really great pitches that get him ground balls, and he's been really unlucky this season. I think he's going to go off in the second half, and if not, it's going to happen next year. This is one of the next best pitchers in baseball. Mark my words now. I was in on him earlier in the season as well. This is like the next Shane McClanahan, I guarantee it. And the other guy for my hometown team, the Giants, Alex Cobb, probably basically the same thing as Ashby, except also not the same thing. He's old. Ashby's young. He's a righty. Ashby's a lefty, but they both limit ground balls. And Alex Cobb does it in a sort of different way. He's got a 64.1% ground ball rate, which is second in baseball, according to Pitcher List. So I don't know if that's a starter above him or if it's the Clay Holmes, like insane 80% ground ball rate, but that's really good. You want to get ground balls, and the Giants defense has really not backed him up on those ground balls. And that's sort of what's held him back from being so good. He's been super unlucky. The Giants defense is terrible, and it's been extra terrible when they have him out there. It's like they put Darren Ruff in center field or something every time he's out there. This is so bad. They're just like, wait. Oh, Cobb is starting. Let's put Brandon Belt at shortstop. Oh shoot, wrong Brandon. Oh, it's too late. They're not actually doing that, but it feels like it. The biggest thing about him is when veteran pitchers go to the Giants, we've seen this in recent years, they break out. We saw it with DeSclafani, we saw it with Wood, we've seen it with other guys, and that's what that exactly. Forgot that he was even on the team. Now he's such a Blue Jay in my mind now, but Cobb had the results in his repertoire that showed that he was on the verge of a breakout. He added 2 miles per hour to both his sinker and his splitter, which is something you don't see from a guy of his age. He's 34. You don't see people add on 2 miles per hour this late into his career, but they got that from him. And those pitches should be a lot better than they've been performing. 33% CSW from the sinker. The splitter is the fastest in baseball from a starter. It's up to 89 miles per hour, 89.5. So I mean, that's going to lead to better results in the future, whether it's like the ground ball rate sticking super high or if it's some more whiffs coming off with it. But then he features a third pitch, which is a 45% CSW curveball, which he does a good job of stealing the free real estate at the beginning of at bats. But both of these guys, I'm like guaranteeing they are going to either break out this year or are going to have a huge 2023. I know this is supposed to be second half breakout candidates, but based off what we've seen so far and how unlucky both of these guys have been and how good their stuff is, they have to reach another level in the second half. And I'm nearly guaranteeing it that we are going to see it in the near future. What do you think?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty big on Cobb. It's hard to be big on Ashby because he plays for the Brewers, but yeah, I mean, they're both guys that, you can see why they've struggled a little bit, and you can see why they should be doing well. Of course, I think Ashby's a great player. But Cobb, I mean, we talked about that several times on the podcast. Like, he was going to be a big ad for the Giants, and it just seems like, well, they're just not doing him any favors. Which maybe if they'll stop, putting cones and pylons out there to play defense for him, maybe that might help him a little bit. But yeah, my last pick is going to be more along the lines of like not so much a breakout of like, well, he'll be good. I think he'll be breaking out to potentially be one of the top 15 hitters in baseball if he can make the necessary change. And I think it's going to be Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz, over the last 23 starts, he has reached base successfully in 23 consecutive starts. He has one pinch hit appearance where he did not collect a hit, and that ended a 12-game hitting streak in the middle of this stretch. He is currently posting the lowest strikeout percentage of his career, the second highest walk percentage of his career. He's walking almost 5% higher than what he strikes out. He has also posted tied for the highest exit velocity of his entire career. He's hit the second longest home run of the season behind Aaron Judge. If you look at Yandy Diaz and say, like, well, he hit 4 home runs. He has a 434-foot bomb right behind Aaron Judge. Yandy Diaz you look at his StatCast metrics and it's just all red apart from his barrel percentage. He hits the ball on the ground. And we talked about this before. I mean, another player that did this that everyone was like, oh, well, he isn't much of anything coming up. It's Vlad Guerrero Jr. until he started to elevate the ball. Congratulations. MVP level player. Yandy Diaz, he's got a 6.6 launch angle. Not really where you want to be. But he's a guy that doesn't strike out at all, really. 10.7% strikeout percentage, 14.9% walk percent. He's got a 144 WRC plus, and that's without him hitting home runs. He drives gaps. He gets hits. He does everything that you want him to do other than hit home runs. If he figures out how to elevate the ball a little bit and tap into that power, because he has unbelievable power, he'd be easily a top 15 hitter. And he would be a guy that the Rays could just look at and be like, wow, this is a perfect foil to like Wander Franco and like the rest of their hitting prospects. He's so good. He's got several multi-hit games scattered in there. He does everything you want. He's got 87 hits. 4 of them are home runs. He's hitting 293 on the year. Like I don't know what else you could want from Yandy Diaz other than him hitting for power. Once he is able to tap into that power for him to hit a home run, to be starting to hit home runs, he's gonna be a huge problem for anyone that faces the Rays in general, not just the AL East, which is what I was going to say. He's really good. He's really become Tampa Bay Times called him the heartbeat of the Rays right now, because he's really driving their offense, which is, of course, apart from Wander Franco, kind of cobbled together of a bunch of random guys like Ji-Man Choi. They just lost Kevin Kiermaier and Mike Zunino, who, well, Kevin Kiermaier has minimal offensive value, but Mike Zunino is a big power bat that they're going to miss. And if Yandy Diaz can scrape, 15, 16 home runs in the second half. I know he only had 4 in the first. But if he can get there and just elevate the ball a little bit, Yandy Diaz will be one of the better hitters in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that sentiment that if he does start lifting the ball more, he will break out, but it's so hard to buy into that now, because that was the whole thing when he went to Tampa Bay, was just like, oh, shoot, he's finally in like a good organization that can help him figure out how to lift the ball in the air and put the ball over the wall, where his big muscles, he's got the biggest muscles in baseball. They'll finally pay off, but those muscles might be limiting him. Like, he might not be flexible enough to hit the ball in the air because he's not able to get under the ball like so many other hitters. But yeah, I mean, it's been 4 years since he's been in Tampa Bay, which sort of has, I don't know, put a lot of reservations on him, put a lot of people off him, because it's sort of hard to buy in that he's going to make the change after he's been there for so long, been trying to make the change. But yeah, I mean, it's so clear that if he just put the ball in the air, he would be so good. His plate discipline is just incredible. I think for now he's like Luis Arias, which is really good. Hidden for average, having a great walk to strikeout ratio, and that's great for a points league like mine that sort of hurts you for strikeouts. But yeah, it's going to take like a major change that we have not yet seen, that I'm sure the Rays have been trying to get him to do. And he's been so great this season, having probably his best season for a full season, that if he does start lifting the ball, he will start hitting the ball over the fence, but it's going to take that change. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that both of us are right on all these. I love when we're smart, but this will definitely be something to visit at the end of the season, revisit to see if we were right. But just to make sure that we don't miss out on anybody, so that people's favorite players don't feel left out, or so that we can just make sure we get everybody. I sort of, just like I said, I sorted the StatCast xWOBA and WOBA differences and just got the most unlucky guys. And then I did the same with xERA for pitchers. So the batters that I thought were notable on there were Alex Verdugo, who's been really unlucky just on his home runs. I think like he's batting 260. He's probably going to bat closer to 300 like he did in the last couple of seasons, but then he also hasn't been hitting for power. I think he's going to turn it around. Max Kepler, sort of the same way. This is a guy where he pulls the ball a lot. So like that xWOBA can be sort of misleading because it doesn't account for spray direction of batted balls or the fielders, shifting him or whatever. So maybe the shift is keeping him from being really good, but I think he can turn it around a little. The same can be said for Jesse Winker. He's a big pull guy, but he's been underperforming so gargantuanly that I think he's got to turn around in the second half, especially with the Mariners heating up. And this is Winker's first year in Seattle. Seattle really limits left-handed batters, but I think he's going to turn around. And for the pitchers, we got Blake Snell, Trevor Rogers, and Ian Anderson. Snell, huge second half last season, ditched his changeup. He's doing that again this year. He just needs to throw his breaking pitches low, keep the fastball high, and then that really will separate his pitches and make it hard for batters to decipher what's going to happen. Trevor Rogers and Ian Anderson are sort of in the same boat in that they were really good in the past. They're both young pitchers. They've struggled immensely in the first half, and it's just hard to bet against these guys that they're going to be some of the worst pitchers in baseball in the second half. I just don't see them keeping that up. They've got to turn it around, and so that's basically the majority of why I think those guys will turn it around. Is there a guy, one or two guys on the exemptions that you have faith in the second half?
Yeah, one of the ones that actually just missed the cut for me was Trevor Rogers. I'm pretty big on Trevor Rogers, and the Marlins are kind of a pitching factory right now. If they can do something like they've done with Sandy, with Trevor Rogers, I mean, it's pretty foregone conclusion what will happen there. His underlying numbers look a lot better than what he's actually posted. I think he's kind of like in the 5 ERAs. But yeah, Trevor Rogers was one I was pretty high on. I looked at Snell for a bit too. Like you said, Snell had that big second half of the season last season after everyone kind of like called him out, like, oh, what a stupid trade for the first one. But yeah, I like those two guys.
Cool. Yeah. So now we'll move on to a very short segment. I wrote an article for Pitcher List titled MLB's Best Offensive Trios, which I thought was pretty interesting when I was writing it. I wanted to just sort of do a couple tweets about it. And then I realized, oh shoot, you can't combine players WRC plus on Fangraphs like you can multiple seasons for a single player. So I was like, shoot, I'm gonna have to do all this math. No way I'm gonna do all that work for a few freaking tweets that are going to get 2 likes or something. So I said, you know what, I'll turn it into an article. I'll get some more eyes on it. And yeah, I'm just going to run down some of the interesting things I thought from it. Definitely go check it out over at Pitcher List, MLB's Best Offensive Trios. It's a pretty interesting article. I ranked all 30 teams by their best trio of offensive players, and that was by their combined WRC plus. I'm just going to run through a couple of the names. It's mostly just going to be the top 3 and then the last team. The last team was the freaking Tigers, and they are so bad. At the writing of this article, they had a 79.7 WRC plus among their trio of best offensive players, which is best is like really stretching it. They are terrible. 79.7 is so bad. It's not only 21% below league average, it is 24% below the next worst team. The A's are 29th and they have a 103.3 WRC plus, and the Tigers are at 79.7. It's like they're just so bad. It was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe it that there's no team even below league average with their best offensive trio, and the Tigers are just so far behind. It's incredible. I can't believe they're so bad. I thought that was a pretty fun way to start off the list for sure, with just like, oh my God, how is this team so bad? But yeah, then the top 3 is pretty interesting. There were a couple interesting names. The Rays got up there pretty high thanks to the previously mentioned Harold Ramirez and Yandy Diaz. Dodgers didn't make the top 5, and the top 3 was very interesting. Number 3, the Yankees also didn't make it either. Number 3 was the Los Angeles Angels. They're on the cover. You got to expect Taylor Ward, Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani to make that list for sure. They're just so amazing. They had a 149 WRC plus between the 3 of them, which is very, very good and much better than the Detroit Tigers. So they landed 3, which is, you sort of expected. The number 1 team, though, because I'm skipping number 2 because it was really the biggest surprise, which, I'm spoiling it, but really go read the rest of the article. I'm only covering 4 teams. We got the Astros at number 1, and they were like pretty far and away the best team. They were at 161 WRC plus, which is really incredible. And that was thanks to Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, and Kyle Tucker. Just 3 elite hitters. Yordan Alvarez, best hitter in baseball, according to WRC+. Altuve was really interesting. I think, what did I write? He would be like one of the best hitters on all the other teams. I wrote it in here. Altuve would be the best hitter on 22 of 30 teams. And he is the number 2 hitter in the Astros organization. 73% of teams, he would be the best hitter on them, and he's the number 2 hitter here. So that tells you all you need to know, especially with Yordan being 42 points higher in WRC plus. Incredible. And Kyle Tucker, amazing in his own right, 135 WRC plus. So the Astros are just really good. They have 3 really good hitters and a lot of pitchers. And the big surprise, which to Davis's dismay, is the St. Louis Cardinals. They feature 2 veterans and a breakout rookie, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Brendan Donovan. Donovan barely qualified. He didn't when I was first writing these, but then when I had to go back and update the statistics to make sure they were good to go, when I released the article, Donovan replaced Carlson and move them inside the top 3. Number 2, thanks really mostly to Goldschmidt and Arenado for being incredible. Goldschmidt's obviously, we've talked about him pretty much every week, but Arenado has been really good in his own right. Norman Aramando, as Davis likes to say. But yeah, I mean, Brendan Donovan is just like classic Cardinals double match, just some random prospect coming up and thriving. But do you have any thoughts about those 4 teams or this article in general?
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts on Norman Aramando. Yeah. I was kind of surprised by the Cardinals being that high, and I was kind of surprised that the Yankees and the Dodgers missed out on like the top 5. It's pretty incredible. The Cubs were actually in the top, like close to the top 15. They were 17th. 2 of the guys that they have are probably going to be traded. So my feelings are very thoroughly hurt. Good article. Make sure you go read all of Jake's stuff over at pitcherlist.com. He makes lots of good stuff. Like, if you like baseball, Jake likes baseball. Go read all of his stuff.
Yes, I do. Yeah, as you can tell by all my litany of baseball books right here.
Nice. So moving on, we'll talk about a little bit of trade deadline preview for a few minutes before we bring in the closer. So I guess we'll run down probably the best. I believe this is probably the number 1 options on the trade block, rumored on the trade block. At each position, we'll run them down with 1 honorable mention thrown in there. And we'll start with the catcher position. Of course, that is Chicago Cubs catcher Wilson Contreras. It's been a tough day. It's been a tough day here in Cubs land. It's been a tough day for me to talk about this. This is their last homestand, potentially before the trade deadline. And what is their last homestand before the trade deadline? And there's a strong chance Wilson Contreras, of course, gets traded. They gave him several standing ovations throughout the game. He's been really teary-eyed. What hurts the most about this, Cubs fan, Wilson Contreras was signed internationally out of Venezuela when he was 17 years old. He's now 30 years old. He's been there 13 years. Literally cried several times in tears, several interviews on the field, in the locker room during the All-Star week that they might trade him. Very clearly doesn't want to go. They're going to trade him. 100%. They're going to trade him.
Yeah.
It sucks. It really sucks. They're definitely going to trade him. He's the best kid. He's the best catcher in baseball this year. He has been, at least. Best catcher in baseball. There's a lot of rumors flying right now that I believe the Mets were wanted him. I think it was either Rosenthal or Passan that said a lot of teams don't see him as a catcher and they think he'd probably have to play outfield or somewhere else. Because they don't think he'd get along with pitcher battery, which I don't understand that. I mean, he hasn't really had any issues with any pitchers outside of like John Lester, and that was for like the 2 years they had David Ross, and that's it. So that didn't make any sense. There's also a rumor that the Mets were going to try to get him and David Robertson in the same trade, and that the Astros were looking at him. So I don't really know what team of the bunch would be after him. There's been rumors that he might get traded to the Padres. I mean, there are several teams throughout all of baseball that could use a quality catcher that can hit, of course, because there just aren't that many of them. And Wilson Contreras this year has been the premier one of them. So very, very high likelihood he gets traded. What are your thoughts on where he might land?
Yeah, you covered the 2 questions I wanted us to hit for each of these guys, which was, do you think they get traded and where to? You got them both. Thanks for doing that. Didn't even have to mention it, but so that the listeners know, we will be hitting that for each of these, maybe not for the honorable mentions, but yeah, I agree. Wilson's going to be traded. The Cubs have just been enamored with trading all of their stars. Yeah, it's really a dumpster there. I would love to see him go to the Giants. They could really use a catcher right now, but I think the Padres is a really good fit. They don't really have anybody great there. Should be interesting. Yeah, you could see him going to the Mets too. They really are terrible at that position. So I think those are the 3 best options there. I don't think there's many AL teams that are super interested. So yeah, Wilson's going to be the top guy on the trade market. At the backstop position. He's a free agent next year, so they only get half a season of him, but he should help any team that's trying to go deep into the playoffs. And then Sean Murphy of the Oakland A's is the honorable mention here. not guaranteed he's traded at all. I think he's still got a couple more years of control. The A's do have a lot of prospects coming up in the minors that are catchers. Yeah, he's not a free agent until 2026, so he's still got 3 more years after this year, so they really don't need to trade him. But if the A's just want to secure that number 1 pick, which I'm pretty sure there's a lottery now, if they just want to secure being the worst team in baseball, get rid of your best player, Sean Murphy, for sure. But yeah, they don't have to trade him yet. He just is the next best option among catchers.
Yeah. They do, of course, have Futures Game MVP Shea Langeliers to bring in. So like he could potentially be expendable, but I don't know if they'd move him now. Moving on to first base, I think the top option here is Josh Bell, and I'm very inclined to agree with that. Well, one, I think he's 100% going to be traded. The Washington Nationals are going to strip down everything they possibly can. They're in the middle of a rebuild. Hopefully they won't trade Soto for every Nationals fan listening, but they're definitely going to trade Josh Bell. There are several teams I think could use a first baseman, chief among them. We talked about him earlier in a little bit. Starting first baseman for the Milwaukee Brewers is Rowdy Tellez, and Josh Bell is about 50 times better than Rowdy Tellez. So I think he's probably the best fit to land. That's probably the best fit for them to hope for is Josh Bell. Bell's kind of been up and down, like really struggled when he went to Washington, but man, he's been quietly very, very good since like struggling first start of his first season in Washington. Josh Bell's a great player. He has experience already hitting in the NL Central, of course, being a former Pirates player, knows those ballparks well. Yeah, Josh Bell's 100% going to be traded. I think the best landing spot for him is the Brewers.
I agree. He's going somewhere. He's a free agent after this season. I think it's more likely Boston.
I could see
they
that
got Bobby Dahlbeck there.
Bobby Dahlbeck is bad.
He's terrible. And also, like, this is not going to restrict them from bringing up Tristan Casas next year because he's going to be a free agent. So I think that's a really good fit unless the Red Sox decide that, we lost 28-5. We're terrible. We're not buying anymore. Then I've seen him rumored to the Blue Jays, which is interesting since they've got Vladdy there. Maybe they just want to put him Bell at DH. So I don't know. It's interesting. I see him going to the Red Sox though. And the honorable mention is Trey Mancini, who has a mutual option next year. So he doesn't have to go. They could exercise that. I'm sure Mancini wants to stay. Maybe he wants to hit free agency and see what he could get. But I know like after he had cancer and stuff, he probably wants to stay someplace where he is familiar and has enjoyed his time. But yeah, I mean, he could be on the move. He doesn't have to be sort of in the same vein as Murphy, but definitely got less control than he does.
Yeah. Trey Mancini, I think, is another interesting thing. I saw some report that basically said like he was almost a shoo-in to be traded regardless of where the Orioles were at. I don't remember who said that. I want to say it was Rosenthal. But yeah, there were high reports that he would probably get traded, especially if the Orioles kind of slip, because I don't think they're overachieving this year, but I don't think they expect to be playoff contenders still. But yeah, Mancini is a really interesting option too. Moving to second base, the top option for trade there is Kansas City Royals, Whit Merrifield. And I think there's a high likelihood he'd get traded, but the Royals have done this before. They didn't trade him when his value was the absolute highest, and they gave him an extension for like no reason when they could have got a lot for him, and they just didn't. So I could see it going either way, but I think they ought to trade him. Second base is always a position that is like he's a second baseman, but he can play basically everywhere, and kind of regularly does and has regularly done in the past. But yeah, Whit Merrifield almost certainly going to be traded. It's interesting to try to figure out where, though, really where he would fit in.
Yeah.
I honestly think a good fit for him would probably be the Giants. I think the Giants could go for him. I really don't know. A lot of the good teams have like kind of a good player there. Depending on the price, I think is a big thing too, because like he's not having a good season. He's kind of been pretty mediocre. It's not the Whit Merrifield of old where he's hitting 300 and playing pretty good defense and basically playing anywhere you want him to. So I don't know. It's tough for me to really designate a fit for him.
Yeah. I don't know if he's going to go. He's still got another year of control and a mutual option in the following season, but I could see him going to like the Dodgers or like you said, Giants, but the Rays are pretty interesting. They could use a guy anywhere, especially with like Wander Franco out, and some other guys injured as well. But I think the best fit is Atlanta, where they don't have a second baseman. It's like Arcia and Robinson Cano, which aren't two great options. They probably don't want to give up too much, but if they're trying to defend their World Series champion trophy from last season. Getting Whit Merrifield would be a pretty solid trade. I think he sort of fits in there. Also, like, you can't really send him to the AL East because of his unvaxxed status. So maybe the Rays aren't the best choice because he won't be able to go to Toronto. And I doubt he changes his mind on being vaxxed. But yeah, that should be an interesting one. I don't really think that he's going to go. The honorable mention is Donovan Solano because there's not really any second base options that are any good. He's barely played this year for the Reds, and he was really good with the Giants, but I don't think he's going to be coveted at all.
Right. And staying with the Reds, the top third base trade option is the aforementioned Brandon Drury. Of course, they're the Reds. They're going to trade him. If they're going to get anything for him, it'd be this year because he is having that potential breakout that I'm not completely sold on, but you are. Maybe some other team is. I think he's going to get traded. This is another guy like where I don't exactly know what the price will be for him. It's not like he's a more like established star. It's kind of a guy that's having a good season that you kind of bet big on. Maybe also another Red Sox kind of guy. Devers could slide over, play first base. They could throw him at third. But that depends on if they're going to be buyers or sellers. Another guy that probably fits in a lot of teams like with the Dodgers because they just have expendable talent. Definitely for sure. Also maybe another Giants guy. Who knows? What are your thoughts on Brandon Drury?
Yeah, it's sort of hard to pin down where he's going to go. I'm not really sure which team needs a third baseman super desperately. Who do the Mariners have at third base? Eugenio Suarez. Yeah, never mind.
Like Eugenio and like Abraham Toro sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not totally sure. Maybe the White Sox or something look to upgrade there. They don't really have, I mean, they've got Moncada, but I mean, he can move around. So can Drury. Drury can move around as well. So, I mean, I just put him at third base because there's literally like no other options there. But yeah, I think he will be traded. He's going to be a free agent next year. They really have no reason to trade him. They're not going to be competitive this year and most likely not next year or the year after that either. So get rid of him while he's got some, while he's still got some value and can get you something in return, but he's definitely going to be on the move. Not quite sure where. I think the Dodgers are a great fit. They love guys that can play multiple positions. And the honorable mention is a guy who I really don't think is going to get traded. It just seemed like the only guy that played third base that has like even a small chance at getting traded, and that's Wilmer Flores. The Giants would have to be sellers at the deadline to trade him because they don't really have any reason to. He's a fan favorite. He's been really good. He can play all over the infield. So I don't see them trading him. I just had to put somebody there as the honorable mention.
Yeah. So another Cincinnati guy that almost certainly is going to be traded, shortstop Kyle Farmer, of course, of the Reds. Yeah, I mean, Barry Larkin likes him. He said he'd sign him to a long-term deal. Well, good thing Barry Larkin doesn't make decisions for the Reds. Yeah. He's 100% going to get traded. I think a good landing spot, honestly, for him is the Mets. I think he'd be a really good option at second baseman, or he could be backup shortstop. He kind of just crushes lefties, so he's good bench bat regardless. I think the Mets make a lot of sense. The Mets make a lot of sense for me for Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he does go. He's not a free agent until 2025, so he's still got 2 more years of eligibility of team control. But he is having his best offensive season. He's like league average in that department, which sort of tells you what kind of player he is. But I think just the fact that he plays shortstop gives the Rays like a reason to go get him with Wander Franco out. Like they have other options, but I don't think they're going to have to give up that much to get Kyle Farmer. Like there just aren't too many other options as well. So I don't know, that seems like the best landing spot for him. He's just not going to be like a guy who pushes the needle super hard or anything. So he's more going to be like a backup or just like a fill-in for the A's at shortstop until they get their star shortstop back. And then the honorable mention there is the Oakland A's, Elvis Andrus. Veteran, not great. He can just play shortstop, and he's on a team that's going to be selling, so he could be on the move. He is going to be, if he does get traded, I don't think anybody's going to be talking about it at all.
Yeah, he's someone that you'll give up like a nothing prospect for, but he's definitely going to get traded too. Some bigger names in the outfield this time. Of course, top billing is going to Juan Soto. And the thing is, I don't think he gets traded. Unless it is for an absolute king's ransom this deadline. I think I've kind of always thought there's a higher likelihood he'll get traded in the offseason. But I just don't think unless someone's going to come up to you and be like, unless a team goes up to the Nationals like, okay, well, we'll give you 6 of our top 10 prospects. And then we'll give you a bunch of other guys and some ready-made big leaguers. Like, there's not very many teams that can offer that will offer that. Like, I just don't know. I don't know. I think the Nats will eventually be dumb enough to acquiesce and trade him. But I think that is a colossal mistake that they should never do. That's just stupid. Like I've said several other times on the show, if they trade Juan Soto, just pick a new team if you're a Nationals fan, because they obviously don't care about you. I just don't think he gets moved this deadline. If he gets moved, I think it's going to be to a team. The Mets originally were like a really interesting option, but I don't think that the Mets have enough to pony up for like an interdivisional tax almost. I just don't think they have enough. Francisco out. They have like Alvarez and Beatty, who apparently they are completely unwilling to move. But it'd have to be like Alvarez and Beatty, and then they don't have any other guys that are really like super, super high level. They have guys that used to be considered that, like Mauricio. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Padres, if they're willing to give up like Abrams, Gore, Hassel, Campusano, basically everything else that they possibly have. That's my only other thing that they could maybe do. It's just tough to envision a trade for Soto because it is going to take so much to get him.
I don't know. I can't tell if it's Boris drubbing up all this drama so that he does get traded, or so that teams like start reaching out and try to trade for him. If he does end up going, I think it's going to be NL West. I think it's going to be, I'm as much as I hope it's the Giants, I think it's going to be like the Padres, possibly the Dodgers, which would honestly this is not actually the case, but I might be done with baseball if the Dodgers get another star like that. It's so messed up that they just get everybody. It'd be cool to see him with the Padres with Machado and Tatis. So that's where I'm expecting him to go. It's hard to tell that he's going to get traded, but the Padres can definitely drum up a really, really good package for Soto, and they might be able to knock the National shoes off to get them to do it. Let's hope not, but for Soto's sake, get him out of that dumpster franchise.
Yeah. The second biggest outfield prospect, or not prospect, trade prospect, I guess, on here is Andrew Benintendi of the Kansas City Royals, and he's definitely going to be traded. He's a free agent come the end of the season. A lot of the early signs were that the Yankees were really interested in him, but he's unvaccinated and he can't play in Toronto, so that's kind of a big issue. He's going to be traded. I just think the closest for me deal that makes sense is I think he gets traded to the Braves. They need help in the corner outfield. He's kind of fits the mold of another weird guy like Rosario, Duvall, whatever. That'll fit. You throw him in the corner outfield, he'll do a job. They don't really have to deal with anything about vaccination status. Just kind of a plug and play. There was actually a report that came out that their top 2 that they're looking to trade for are the Reds' Luis Castillo and Andrew Benintendi, and that they think both are very attainable with the current prospect stock that they have. The Royals and them have a very clear, understanding because they traded for that draft pick very recently. So, they could look at it and be like, well, look, we did you a favor. We gave you that draft pick, give us a little bit more in this return. Or the Braves, on the other hand, could be like, well, we kind of gave you a little bit for that draft pick that, you didn't really want to, too much. Let us get Benintendi. So yeah, I think he'll probably land somewhere like the Braves.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not really sure where he's going to end up. He is going to be traded. He's a free agent after the season, so no reason for the Royals to hold on to him. I don't know. It's like there's not many teams that need tons of outfield help or anything. I think he could go to the Braves. Yeah, that was a pretty solid choice. It's really hard to tell. Maybe the Astros want like a veteran in center field or something, even though he's not really a center fielder. So, Michael Brantley's out too. So maybe they turn to him and they don't have to turn to McCormick and Myers every day. So Benintendi could be a good spot there, but he is for sure getting traded, just not to the AL East.
Yeah. Definitely not to the AL East. The third option on here is Chicago Cubs' Ian Happ. And I do think he will be traded, even though they don't necessarily need to. He has another year of control. But there's a lot of reports that came out from The Athletic that said Ian Happ is basically wanted by any team that's going to be considered a buyer. He's a switch hitter. He hits for power. He's hitting for a career high in average. Gets on base. Plays passable defense. He's not an excellent defender or anything, but he plays passable defense, and he's a good bat to have in your lineup. They're definitely going to trade him. It's the Chicago Cubs. They're tearing everything down. I'm not bitter about it. You're bitter about it. They're 100% going to trade him. Him and Wilson Contreras kind of embraced in the dugout today after everyone had already left. So I'm pretty sure they're both acknowledging that, either Wilson's going to get traded, Happ's going to get traded. Both of them will probably get traded. It's weird to envision a fit for him. I think something like the Padres, someone like the Braves. The Braves make a lot of sense for him too. I've seen some stuff for the White Sox. Please God, no. The Mets make a lot of sense for him too, just because he kind of gives them another bat. Corner outfield. So there could potentially be a trade where, Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ, and David Robertson all go to the Mets. That'd be something.
Yeah. I think it's whoever gets Wilson Contreras, honestly. I think they might as well go for both of them. It's like all those teams that need a catcher also need an outfielder or could use some help out there. The Padres need an outfield help, and Mets, like you said. So, those seem like the best spots. You said he doesn't need to be traded, but he was an all-star for the first time this year. Got to be the peak of his trade potential. So, yeah, it might be another star going out of Chicago. But I had two honorable mentions here since we did three outfielders, but it's Tommy Pham of the Reds and David Peralta of the Diamondbacks. Peralta's not like a big name. He's going to be a free agent after this season. Not going to be leading off any headlines, but Tommy Pham's pretty interesting. Obviously, he's been in a lot of headlines this year, so he's definitely not going to the Giants after fighting Jock Peterson, slapping him in the face, Will Smith style. But yeah, he's got a mutual option next season. So, I doubt he would want to stay with the Reds, but there's a big chance that he is gone as well. I'm not really sure if either of those guys are going to be getting big trade packages.
Yeah, no, I think both will probably get moved, but those will probably be like more lower tier trades to talk about. Sticking with Tommy Pham's teammate, talked about a lot of Reds. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right-handed starter, the top guy on the market there is going to be Luis Castillo. I think he's another guy that they don't necessarily have to move. Am I wrong on that? Does he have a year of control?
He's still got one more year of control after this year.
They're still going to trade him. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think Atlanta probably will get him. It makes a lot of sense to go in their rotation. Isn't Morton still hurt, or has he come back yet? I think Castillo makes a lot of sense. Probably either the Yankees or the Braves for me for Castillo.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to place all these pitchers that we were going to mention, but I think every team can use a starter. The Cardinals are one of those teams that really don't have the best rotation. I think they're going to go for one of these right-handers. Maybe they do go for one of the veteran left-handers instead. But yeah, there's lots of guys, and they don't need to be traded this year. I think the Castillo, along with Frankie Montas and Tyler Mahle, the two honorable mentions, are all eligible for free agency after next season. So they all still have another year of control. So none of them have to go, but if you want them traded at the peak of their value, now would be the time. Like I said, there's every team is going to be open to this trade possibilities. Except for maybe the Padres. But yeah, like I said, there's just every single team can use a top of the line rotation mate to improve the entire rotation, move everybody down a slot, move the fifth guy to the bullpen. So I think all these guys are going to be open to pretty much every team that's buying right now. Yeah.
Moving on to the left-handed starter, the top prospect, or I keep saying prospect. Can you stop doing that? Top option there is Texas Rangers, Martin Perez. I don't think he gets moved. I don't think so. The Rangers are notoriously a very stubborn organization for like no reason. I don't think he's a Texas guy. He's having a career year. I think they're probably going to more likely try to tie him down to an extension. I don't think they will trade Martin Perez.
Yeah, I've heard that they've been trying to work out an extension with him. Like you said, he's a hometown guy. He probably wants to stick in Texas where he's finally broken out to all-star levels. So that's very cool for him. He's a free agent after this year, so they're going to have to make a decision, and hopefully they don't pull a Rockies and not give him the qualifying offer and then let him walk in free agency. So, I don't think the Rangers are as stupid as the Colorado franchise, but there's a possibility. But yeah, he's not going to be pushing too many needles as well. Like, he's been really good this season, but he's been really lucky. And the honorable mention is Jose Quintana. Very similar boat. He's not on a good team now. He's been really solid this year thanks to a different approach against batters. So hopefully he can be really good. He seems like the type of guy that would go to the Cardinals.
Yeah, he definitely does. Quintana is almost certainly going to be moved. Moving on to the reliever market, where basically all of these names I think will end up getting traded. Relievers are usually an insanely hot commodity around the trade deadline. The top right-handed reliever this year has been David Robertson, who's had a little bit of a career renaissance in Chicago. Yeah, he's going to get moved. I mean, it's the Cubs. There's no reason not to trade him. They're not in contention. He's on a 1-year deal. Any team that's competitive will want him. Yeah, he's going to get traded. I think, like said previously, Mets make a lot of sense. They need another bullpen arm. Padres really need arms in their bullpen. The Dodgers potentially, I know they're going to get Trinan back at some point. But yeah, I think one of those teams, like Dodgers, Mets, Padres, Giants, any of the good ones will want him.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the Twins and Red Sox are the most likely to trade for a guy that can fill in as the closer. So I think Robertson's probably the only guy that could be a closer if he does get moved. But yeah, he is like a guarantee to get moved. If Contreras and Happ don't go, he is for sure going. But Daniel Bard and Michael Fulmer are those honorable mentions. I think Fulmer's a free agent after this year, so he's like guaranteed to go as well. But Daniel Bard, I don't know. You're giving the Rockies too much credit, bro. I've heard rumblings that they're trying to extend him.
10 years for Daniel Bard.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last position. This is another world record podcast from the two Free Baseball Boys.
One of these days we're gonna go for like 5 hours.
5 hours. I think my girlfriend might break up with me.
Well, we won't do 4 hours then. We'll cut it off.
Okay.
So, the number one left-handed trade target is left-handed reliever trade target is gonna be Matt Moore, also the Texas Rangers, joining Martin Perez. Yeah, he's gonna get moved. I mean, relievers now are just at the trade deadline. They're gonna get traded. Left-handed relievers especially are really, really valuable just in general. There are not very many good ones of them. So yeah, he'll get moved, and someone will give up probably more than they should for Matt Moore.
Yeah, there's not many good guys available in the left-handed reliever market, which is why Andrew Chafin lands as the honorable mention, even though he just signed in the. No, I'm not saying he's not good. I'm saying he lands on here because he just signed a deal with them in the offseason and he doesn't have to go. So that sort of makes it, sort of iffy. Like he doesn't need to be traded. So that's sort of why he's the honorable mention and not like some guy who's about to be a free agent or something this year. Mm-hmm. So, but Matt Moore is one of those guys who's about to be a free agent and has finally reached the potential that he showed when he was like the number one prospect above like Mike Trout and Bryce Harper when he was in the minor leagues. I don't know if you knew that was the case with Matt Moore, that people were so enamored with him, but he's never been good as a starter. And he's finally doing that as a reliever for the Rangers. He's got a 2.54 ERA this year.
Congratulations to Matt Moore. Maybe you'll get to go on a team and win something before Bryce Harper or Mike Trout do.
True.
The honorable mention there, of course, Andrew Chafin. Chafin's got a strong chance of being moved. The Tigers are not going to be competitive for basically the entire duration of his contract. He was really, really good for the Cubs, and he was really good for I believe he was really good for the A's after they traded him last year. It wasn't as good, but yeah, I mean, Chafin will probably get moved too, and someone will give a pretty big return for him. Reliever wise, it's not going to get like top prospects back, but yeah, they'll get something.
He was traded last year. Traded last year to the A's.
Greg Deichmann came back in that trade. Shout out to Greg Deichmann. So we talked about relievers. We just hand the bullpen phone over. We're already there. We'll bring in the closer.
Yeah. Well, we got another Extra Innings podcast, that's for sure. Nearing 2.5 hours. We'll probably reach it once we get through this one, but we're going to bring in the closer. Don't forget to put up the little banner. I'm talking to myself there. We got Willie Hernandez this week. This is a really interesting one. If you don't know who Willie Hernandez is, you will now. stay tuned. He had a 13-year career from 1977 to 1989, during which he pitched for the Chicago Cubs, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Detroit Tigers. He debuted in April of 1977 against the New York Mets, during which he pitched 2 1/3 innings. He only allowed 1 hit. He didn't allow a run, a walk, or a strikeout. And he made his debut with the Cubs because he was scooped up from the Phillies in the 1976 Rule 5 draft. He would later pitch for that team. But yeah, go look up the Rule 5 draft. It's picking up minor leaguers that are sort of eligible to be stolen from a team. But he finished that rookie season that started off really well with a 3.03 ERA, 110 innings pitched, and 4 saves. Pretty solid rookie year. And it was sort of just like the first few years of his career were just sort of pretty solid. Like, he wasn't blowing anybody's socks off. He was solid in 78, wasn't great in 79, pitching to a 5.01 ERA. And so the Cubs decided to try him in the rotation in 1980. He started just 7 games out of the 53 he appeared in, and he pitched to a 4.40 ERA. So that experiment didn't really work out. The following season, he pitched only 13 2/3 innings. So like, nobody was really like, oh shoot, you seen this Willie Hernandez guy? He's pretty crazy. But then he had his best season to date in 1982, 75 innings. He had a 3 ERA even with 10 saves. So he started breaking out and then was traded to the Phillies the following year, mid-season. He helped the Phillies to the World Series, during which they lost, but he still pitched to a 3.29 ERA with 7 saves during the regular season. And prior to the next season, he got traded to the Tigers, and this is where his career finally took off, and what makes him such a notable addition to the Bring in the Closer segment that we do every single podcast. He had his best career in 1984, the first season of his career in Detroit. He led the majors with 80 games. He led the majors with 68 games finished. He tossed 140 innings pitched with a 1.92 ERA and 32 saves. All of those marks were career bests, and that helped him make his first All-Star team. And now the notable stuff starts to come in. He won the AL Cy Young Award and the AL MVP Award for his efforts for the Tigers that season. Incredible. Sub-2 ERA, tons of innings out of the bullpen, 32 saves, really crazy, especially in 1984. But at the time, he was only the 3rd player ever to win both Cy Young and MVP awards in the same season, and the 2nd ever to do it as a reliever. He was the 3rd relief pitcher ever to win MVP, because I think the first one who did, I think there wasn't a Cy Young award then or something, or maybe he didn't win, which would be, classic 1950s voting. But nonetheless, now with all the rest of the awards coming through as it stands today, he's one of only 9 relievers to have won the Cy Young Award in MLB history, and one of only 4 to have won the MVP award. So he really stands out in that aspect. And he even won the World Series, his first and only, that season. So I mean, that was an incredible season for Willie Hernandez. He was probably feeling really great after that, and it carried over into the following season, during which he backed up that historical campaign, pitching to a 2.70 ERA with 31 more saves and a career best 0.90 whip, making his 2nd All-Star team. And then he started to become known by his given name, Guillermo Hernandez, towards the end of his career, which it's cool. Started being called by what he's actually named. So that was just a little notable thing that was on Wiki that I felt like needed to be in here. But he pitched one last nationally recognized season in 1986, which means he made the All-Star team, his 3rd of his career. He came with a 3.55 ERA and 24 saves. Over the next 2 seasons, he pitched to a 3.32 ERA and combined for 18 saves before he fizzled out in 1989 at age 34, which sort of ended his career. He finished that season with a 5.74 ERA, but still racked up 15 saves. So they were still believing in him, even though he was pitching probably at the worst level of his career. He retired shortly after that, after attempting a comeback with the Toronto Blue Jays, but that ended his career with a 16.7 Baseball Reference WAR, 1,044 2/3 innings pitched, a 3.38 ERA, and a 1.25 WHIP that came with 147 saves, which places him 92nd all time on the career saves leaderboard. But yeah, Willie Hernandez, that one season, 1984, is historic. You rarely see a pitcher win AL MVP and Cy Young, or MVP and Cy Young, but you rarely see a reliever do either of those. So it was really, really a cool season. And that's really a fun one to look back on and be like, what were voters on back then? But also, that he was really good that year. I don't know if he deserved an MVP award, but he was really, really good. He definitely would have won Raleigh's Relief Man of the Year award if they had that back in the day. Any thoughts on Willie Hernandez, or closing thoughts before we plug our socials and end the pod?
No, I think that's everything. Shout out to Willie Hernandez for closing out
Yeah.
our podcast. Check back in with us next Monday at 4. Times may change. Some things changing with the show, but times may change. So just check with the Athletes Hub on Twitter, the athleteshub.org on the internet that you're watching this on. Check out us on social media. You can find me on Twitter. It's the one I'm most active on. Most I complain on the most at DVS Bird. I'm Davis Bird, of course. It's on my name's right there. You can read it. And you can check out Jake Crumpler at Jake Crumpler on Twitter, and you can read all of his stuff, like I said before, at theathleteshub.org, Baseball HQ, and for Pitcher List. He makes great baseball stuff, man. Just read all of his stuff. Go do it right now. I know
It'll take a while. I read a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you spent 2.5 hours with us already. What's a couple more hours? Just read all of
True.
But check back in with us. Next week, we'll most likely recap the entire month of July. So it'll be a big one. Maybe not a 2.5 hour long podcast again, but we'll see. Maybe we'll give you a 4-hour one just for kicks. But that's all we got for today. Anything you want to say?
No, that great episode. Let's do it again next week.
Absolutely. And just check back in with us next Monday. See ya.